Chapter 792. The first to notice was the old General Lien Po. Lien Po was responsible for keeping an eye on the Feng Yi army with 70,000 soldiers. The moment the Feng Yi army moved toward Wenshan City, they were detected by Lien Po's scouts. At first, Lien Po thought that the Feng Yi army was coming to reinforce the Dragon Stallion army and didn't pay it much attention. Other than reporting the situation to the command center, he only ordered the entire army to enter a state of war. It wasn't that Lien Po was arrogant, but according to the intelligence gathered by the alliance, the Feng Yi army was just a newly formed army of prisoners of war. Although the quality of the Feng Yi army's soldiers was not bad, their teamwork was terrible. As such, Lien Po was confident that he could stop the Feng Yi army with 70,000 soldiers, not to mention on such a narrow mountain path. It wasn't just Lien Po. Wu Qi and Di Chen weren't too surprised by this information. But what happened next left them completely dumbfounded. From the west, Ma Chao's Tiger Panther cavalry was the fastest. Like a bolt of lightning, they swept away all spies in their path and charged toward Wenshan City. By the time Di Chen and the others received the news, the Tiger Panther cavalry was only 20 li away from Wenshan City. With the cavalry's speed, it would only take 15 minutes. This sudden change immediately alarmed Di Chen and the others, and they even panicked. What's going on? Why would the Imperial Guards of Shanghai City appear so close to Wenshan City? Di Chen and the others were no fools. They immediately looked at the Lord of Yuanyang City, the fake Burmese Little Sick. The Imperial Guards had obviously teleported here, and the closest city to Wenshan City was Yuanyang City. Di Chen and the others didn't even need to think to conclude that the fake Burmese Little Six had betrayed Yunnan City. It was even more likely that this person had already colluded with Shanghai City. Traitor! Qin Feng lost control of his emotions and drew his sword, placing it against the fake Burmese Little Six's neck. The fake Burmese Little Six, however, remained calm. I'm a traitor? I'm just working with Shanghai City. If I'm a traitor, then what's the point of selling the city to the Yan-Huang alliance? Now that things had developed to this point, which of the lords of the cities couldn't see the Yan-Huang alliance's wild ambitions? Some of the feudal lords in the city were already feeling remorseful. If they had known this would happen, they would have surrendered to Shanghai City. As such, the lords were naturally dissatisfied with Qin Feng, the instigator of all this. When he heard the words of the fake Burmese Little Six, he felt a little sad. Qin Feng, on the other hand, felt as if his sore spot had been poked. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and said harshly, "Humph, you've already admitted it yourself. If that's the case, then go to hell." As he spoke, he was about to swing his sword down. The fake Burmese Little Six's eyes were filled with mockery, and he was unmoved. "You can't kill him. Stop." At the critical moment, Di Chen and Battle Wolf stopped Qin Feng's reckless actions. Qin Feng was puzzled. Di Chen rubbed his forehead and said, "Idiot, since this person is connected to Shanghai City, we should capture and interrogate him. Isn't killing him the same as releasing a tiger back to the mountains?" Due to his extreme anger, Di Chen subconsciously voiced out his thoughts. The word idiot made Qin Feng, who was already angry from embarrassment, feel even more ashamed. If there was a crack in this place, Qin Feng would jump into it right away. How come in the blink of an eye, he was not a person on both sides, and was not welcomed on either side? Qin Feng couldn't figure it out. Di Chen knew that he had said something wrong, but he didn't want to correct him. He turned around and said to the fake Burmese Little Six, "Tell me the plan of Shanghai City, and I will spare your life on behalf of the Yan-Huang alliance. I will even reward you." The fake Burmese Little Six sneered. How arrogant! Since when did Yan-Huang alliance have the right to manage Yunnan City-State's affairs? Pardon me? Ridiculous! As soon as the words came out, the faces of the city lords changed again. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Di Chen's face darkened. The fake Burmese little six smiled calmly and didn't want to answer Di Chen's question anymore. Seeing this, Military Kill Ripper lost his temper and said, "You son of a bitch, you're still so stubborn when you're about to die. Believe it or not, we can keep you in captivity forever." The fake Burmese little six shook his head and looked at the city lords with pity, especially Di Chen and the other members of the Yen Huang Alliance. He said, "I'm not the one who's about to die, it's all of you. You think you're so smart, but you don't know that you've fallen into Shanghai City's trap. How dare you brag about yourself? Shame on you." "What did you say?" Military Kill Ripper was enraged. "I'm talking about you. Just wait for your death. I'm not going to keep you company." The fake Burmese little six bit the poison pill in his mouth and committed suicide. Of course, the fake Burmese little six wouldn't die because Shanghai City had already prepared a doll for him. After the mission was completed, the fake Burmese little six could enjoy the rest of his life in the game. Before he left, the fake Burmese little six felt deeply sorry for the other city lords. So what if they struggled? In the end, they still ended up in a miserable state. Yunnan City State's biggest mistake was to work with Yen Huang Alliance. As the fake Burmese little six turned into a beam of light and disappeared, the atmosphere became deathly silent. In this awkward atmosphere, more and more information was sent to them. With each piece of information, the atmosphere became colder. In the end, the entire city seemed to be sealed in ice. Di Chen and the others were like ice sculptures, their faces were ashen and filled with despair. Battle Wolf and Xiong Ba both let out a long sigh as they felt an indescribable sense of defeat. "In the end, we still lost to Shanghai City." Battle Wolf was indignant. On the surface, the Alliance didn't seem to have made any mistakes during the battle in Yunnan. In fact, there were many things that were worth noting. Just when victory was in sight, there was suddenly a 180-degree turn of events. Could it be that what the fake Burmese little six said was true? That they had fallen into Shanghai City's trap every single time? Battle Wolf instinctively refused to believe it. If that was the case, then it would be an absolute blow to their confidence. No one knew when it started, but Shanghai City had turned into a huge shadow that shrouded the sky above the Yen Huang Alliance. At this moment, Xiong Ba, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke up. "Everyone, calm down. Judging from the current situation, the enemy will soon reach Wenshan City. Let's think about what we should do. Should we continue to fight or should we retreat?" "Retreat? How?" Di Chen was somewhat bitter. The city guards weren't just 1 or 2,000, but 200,000 soldiers. It would take 1 or 2 hours to rush back from the battlefield to Wenshan City. Moreover, the front line was still fighting. Wu Qi had sent the front line and the rear line to fight the Dragon Stallion army. How could they escape so easily? No one had the ability to do so, not even Divine General Wu Qi. Xiong Ba shook his head. "Of course I don't expect to withdraw all the troops. What I mean is, before Shanghai City's encirclement is complete, we should quickly call back the main generals. Without hesitation, we should immediately leave through the teleportation formation. Otherwise, once Wenshan City is surrounded, Wu Qi and the others may be captured." This isn't what you want to see, right?" Xiong Ba's words shocked Di Chen and the others. Yes, if the soldiers were lost, they could always recruit more. If Wu Qi, Lian Po, and Tian Dan were to be captured, it would be a devastating blow to the army. Wasn't Lord Chuanshan's Zhao Qua a lesson in blood? Chapter 793. Do we have to do this? We still have 200,000 soldiers we might be able to fight. Di Chen could not make a decision. If they retreated now, they would be like stray dogs. If they retreated now, the Yen Huang Alliance would become the laughingstock of the world. The prestige that they had painstakingly accumulated before this would plummet because of this battle, and all of it would be reduced to zero. How do we fight? Xiong Ba shook his head. The enemy's 4 field armies are charging towards Wenshan City, especially the Tiger Leopard cavalry. Once the tiger-leopard cavalry breaks into the city and destroys the teleportation formation, we'll end up like Zhao Kuo, trapped by Bai Qi. When that time comes, no one will be able to escape. Although Xiongba's words were frightening, the others could not refute him. Then let's retreat. Lord Chunshan was the first to express his stance. He had already lost Zhao Kuo. He did not want to lose Tiandan as well. Just as Di Chen and the others were about to express their stance, a cold voice came from the side. None of you will be able to leave. He turned his head and saw that the one who spoke was Qin Fun, the chairman of the city-state who had lost all face. What did you say? Di Chen could not react. A trace of madness flashed across Qin Feng's face. His voice rose several octaves. I said, none of you will be able to leave. We signed an agreement that the Yan-Huang Alliance must help the city to repel the army of Shanghai City. For this, the city has already paid a heavy price. There is no way out. What? Once the battle is not going well, you want to leave and leave behind a mess? How can there be such a good thing in the world? Responding to Qin Feng, a group of soldiers suddenly rushed up the city walls, surrounding Di Chen and the members of the Yan-Huang Alliance. Seeing this, Di Chen and the other personal guards drew their swords and confronted the soldiers. The atmosphere at the scene suddenly became tense. Wenshan City was, after all, the home ground of the city. Qin Feng's words still carried a lot of weight. All the city lords present agreed with Qin Feng's words and approved of Qin Feng's decision to mobilize the soldiers. As a result, Di Chen and the others were immediately in danger. The two forces that were originally working together suddenly turned against each other and went their separate ways. Di Chen and the others' expressions changed, but they didn't panic. Currently, Wenshan City's garrison was divided into two groups. One group was the Lord's personal guards, numbering around 7,000 people. The other group was Wenshan City's City Guard Division. Of the 7,000 personal guards, Di Chen and the other members of the Yan-Huang Alliance had 500 people each, making up exactly half of the total. The remaining half were naturally the personal guards of the city's lords. Thus, the one who truly determined the difference in military strength between the two sides was the City Guard Division stationed in the city. Whoever controlled the City Guard Division would have the initiative. Qin Feng didn't even think about it and naturally put the City Guard Division into the city faction. Because of this, Qin Feng was full of confidence. It could only be said that Qin Feng was still too young and had underestimated Di Chen and the others. Di Chen laughed and said to Qin Feng sarcastically, "Do you really think you can defeat us?" As soon as he finished speaking, the Lord of Wenshan City, Hao Hu Yu Feng, suddenly stood up and stood beside Di Chen and the others. His intention was obvious. "Vast call to Imperial Wind, you dare?" The city lords were shocked and couldn't believe that Hao Hu Yu Feng would suddenly betray them. However, Hao Hu Yu Feng laughed and said, "Can't you see? The city is already finished. Don't tell me that I still have to stay on this broken ship and sink with you?" "That's right, a wise man submits to circumstances." Di Chen took over and smiled at the city lords opposite him. "If you retreat with us, you can still live a glorious life. If you continue to resist, you'll have nothing left." Time was of the essence and Di Chen didn't want to waste any more time. When the city lords saw this, their expressions were bitter and they didn't say anything. They brought their guards and left the city walls. Looking at the situation, they were preparing to directly teleport away. They no longer had any confidence in this battle. They were tired. There were also city lords who arranged for their personal guards to go to the front lines in an attempt to recall their territory's generals. These outstanding generals were all worth tens of thousands of gold coins. Even if they lost their territory, they could still transfer these generals to other city lords and earn a large sum of money. At the very least, they could keep them by their side as bodyguards. With the fourth system update and the release of the expansion pack, Martial World Storm, Royal City wasn't peaceful anymore. If they wanted to live comfortably, they not only needed money, but also strong guards. Clang! The long sword fell to the ground. Qin Feng looked at his allies gradually disappearing. His face was pale, like a poor abandoned worm. When Di Chun and the others saw this, they no longer wanted to punish Qin Feng. They shook their heads and led their troops away from the city walls. At the same time, urgent orders were passed to the front lines. Wu Qi and Tiandan were ordered to gather 100,000 of the alliance's backbone generals and immediately leave the battlefield. Lien Po was ordered to lead his troops back to the city to fight against the Tiger Leopard cavalry that was about to arrive. The west gate was ordered to be closed and the city guard division was stationed on the city walls to resist the enemy Tiger Leopard cavalry. Di Chun and the others were now in a race against time. As the military orders were passed down, panic was inevitable. Before the city lords left, they tried to recall their generals. The generals of the alliance who were fighting on the front lines were at a loss. Even Zhang Shutuo received the news. His face was extremely ugly. The alliance inevitably fell into chaos. Some left, while others waited in place, listening to Zhang Shutuo, the commander of the alliance. The wilderness generals weren't puppets. Everyone had independent thoughts. From the looks of it, the city had completely surrendered. If they returned to their masters now, what good ending would they have? They would either be sold or become guards. To these generals, it was an extreme humiliation, no matter which one it was. Soldiers shouldn't end up like this. Zhang Shutuo looked at the generals gathered around him and sighed in his heart. He said in a low voice, "Since the Lord has summoned us as generals, how can we disobey the military order?" Even in the wilderness, Zhang Shutuo still put loyalty first. No matter how irrational the Lord's order was, Zhang Shutuo still didn't want to disobey. When the generals heard this, they all had different expressions. At this moment, a young general spoke up. He said with emotion, "General, the Lord's action is clearly a betrayal to the soldiers on the front lines. The Lords have summoned us generals back not because of any camaraderie, but because we are valuable and can bring them benefits. If we leave, what will happen to the soldiers under us? Will they be slaughtered by the enemy? The Lords don't care about the lives of their soldiers, but as generals, can we watch our children die in vain? General, you value small things over great things. Forgive me for not agreeing with you." "You're right. General, instead of this, it's better to lead the troops and surrender to Shanghai City." In the wilderness, Shanghai City was famous for its generous treatment of its soldiers. The Lord, the Duke of Shanghai, has the support of the entire army. As the saying goes, take a step back and you'll see the world. Since the Lords have abandoned us, why don't we seek a better future for the soldiers under us? That way, it's better than dying in vain." Someone echoed. Hearing this, the expressions of the generals changed. Zhang Shutuo's expression was complicated. On one hand, he had to be loyal to the Lord, and on the other hand, he had to sacrifice the lives of thousands of soldiers. When the two were incompatible, Zhang Shutuo, a veteran general, didn't know how to choose. At this moment, there was a commotion at the front lines. Looking over, a group of cavalry suddenly rushed out of the Xiang Dragon barracks, holding the golden flag of Shanghai City, indicating that they were just ambassadors. The news of Wenshan City being surrounded by Shanghai City's army had only spread among a small portion of the soldiers. Some of the soldiers didn't even know about it and were still attacking the barracks. This group of cavalry was really bold. If they were careless, they could be captured by the Allied army and die a horrible death. Fortunately, Zhang Shutuo and the other generals received the news and immediately sent a small group of cavalry over. In a short while, the cavalry arrived in front of Zhang Shutuo and the other generals. Shua, under the lead of the chief general, 100 cavalrymen got off their horses. "Who are you?" a deputy general asked. The chief general took off his helmet, revealing a handsome face. It was Luo Shixin. Zhang Shutuo's eyes narrowed when he saw him and he sighed. At first glance, Zhang Xutuo could tell that the young general had completely grown up. In history, when Luo Shixin was captured and died, Zhang Xutuo was filled with grief. Who would have thought that the two of them would meet again? Luo Shixin was obviously excited as well. He quickly walked in front of Zhang Xutuo and cupped his fists. Shixin greets Marshal. However, he used the title he used in history. Of course, the two of them were serving different masters and Luo Shixin couldn't kneel down on one knee to greet them. Zhang Xutuo's expression was cold, and he said with a straight face, "Are you here to ask us to surrender?" He was still the marshal of the Allied army and naturally, he had to show the proper attitude. Luo Shixin was not surprised when he saw this. Marshal N was such a person. As long as it was related to official matters, there was no mercy to speak of. It was absolute business. I'm afraid that Marshal N isn't very clear about the current situation. Luo Shixin said and told him about the situation of the 4 armies surrounding Wenshan City. The faces of the Allied army's generals darkened when they heard this. Luo Shixin even found out about the drama that had taken place on the city gate tower and exposed it one by one. Even Zhang Xutuo was embarrassed when he heard this. What was going on? Luo Shixin naturally wasn't here to embarrass the generals of the Allied army. He cupped his fists and said, "Marshal N, generals, my lord and General Bai Qi have asked me to pass on a message. The gates of Shanghai City are already open for all of you. As long as the Allied army is willing to surrender, the blood debt from before can be written off. After entering Shanghai City, we are all brothers." The Allied army's generals were moved when they heard this and became even more determined to surrender. Luo Shixin looked at Zhang Xutuo and said, "Marshal N, what do you think?" Shixin is very much looking forward to fighting with Marshal N on the battlefield again, and not against you like now. Chapter 794. Luo Shixin's words had thoroughly moved the hearts of all the generals present. If Zhang Xutuo was unwilling to surrender, these generals would surrender to Shanghai City. They might even kidnap Zhang Xutuo to claim credit. Zhang Xutuo, the commander-in-chief of the coalition army, was not important enough for these generals to die for him. In truth, Zhang Xutuo had only 2 choices. He could either surrender or die a martyr's death like he had in history, leaving behind a good reputation. But the wilderness was not history, and Zhang Xutuo did not have the innate loyalty to his lord and country that he did to the Sui emperor. After weighing the pros and cons, Zhang Xutuo ultimately chose to surrender. Thus, everyone was naturally happy. Name: Zhang Xutuo, king level, dynasty, Sui dynasty, identity, general of Shanghai City, occupation, special class general, loyalty, 68 commander, 82 martial power, 87 intelligence, 60 politics, 45 specialty, loyal and brave, increases troop morale by 40, increases troop attack power by 15, cultivation technique, omitted, equipment, spear evaluation. A famous general of the Sui dynasty who possessed both courage and wisdom, outstanding military exploits, and was the pillar of the Sui dynasty. Zhang Xutuo was a top-class existence amongst king-level generals. If he had not died in battle, he would have become an emperor-level general and left his name in the annals of history. With the surrender of the generals, the remaining 60,000 soldiers of the coalition army surrendered to Shanghai City. At almost the same time that the coalition army surrendered, the news that Wu Qi, Tiandan, and the other Allied generals had withdrawn from the front lines spread through the ranks of the Allied army, inciting the soldiers' fury. When the Allied troops saw that their allies had surrendered, they decided to go all out and surrender to Shanghai City as well. In a short time, the vast army of 150,000 surrendered, filling the entire battlefield in a spectacular display. The battlefield, which had been filled with fierce fighting a moment ago, instantly became deathly silent. Seeing this, Bai Qi immediately led his troops out of the stronghold and prepared to receive the surrendered army. The 150,000 soldiers were like a giant barrel of gunpowder. Having just experienced a bitter battle, the soldiers were all irritable. If they were not careful, a conflict could break out under the provocation of someone with ulterior motives. Bai Qi had spent his entire life in the army, so he naturally had a deep understanding of this. Other than sending 30,000 soldiers to capture the 10,000 soldiers still harassing the supply lines, the remaining 60,000 dragon stallion soldiers were left behind to guard the surrendered soldiers. As for the situation in Wenshan City, the dragon stallion army no longer needed to intervene. That was the truth. When the tiger leopard cavalry arrived at Wenshan City, Ma Chao saw that the city gate was tightly shut. He knew that it would be difficult to break through the city gate with just the tiger leopard cavalry alone. Therefore, he decided to detour around the west gate and ran towards the south. At this time, Lian Po's 70,000 allied troops had received orders to retreat to Wenshan City. Behind Lian Po's army was Feng Yi's army that had been chasing after them. The arrival of the tiger leopard cavalry was a fatal blow to Lian Po's army. They were like a sharp arrow, cutting the allied troops who were entering the city in two, completely cutting off the retreat of the allied troops who were still outside the city. Seeing this, the allied soldiers desperately squeezed towards the city gate, trying to enter the city to hide. Unfortunately, the size of the city gate was limited, and there were too many soldiers. In times of crisis and life and death, the discipline of the army had long been thrown to the back of the minds of the soldiers. Just like that, the tragic stampede took place, and the number of soldiers who were trampled to death was uncountable. For a moment, the city gate was in chaos, and it was very lively. Fortunately, Lian Po had already entered the city. Otherwise, he might really have been buried in the chaos. Di Chun had ordered Lian Po's army to retreat to Wenshan City. Other than the objective factor of Lian Po's army being the closest to Wenshan City and the objective of defending the city, there was also a little bit of selfishness. Of course, the generals in the army were precious, and the soldiers they had brought were also very precious. They were all high-ranking soldiers and elite soldiers. Di Chun and the others also wanted to save as much as they could. They had never thought that Ma Chao would be so decisive. Once he found that the city gate was closed, he immediately took a detour and cooperated with Feng Yi's army to capture Lian Po's army. Because of the tiger leopard cavalry's speed, the number of allied troops who had successfully retreated to the city was only about 10,000. Being attacked from both sides by the tiger leopard cavalry and Feng Yi's army, and having lost their generals, the remaining 56,000 allied troops could only obediently surrender in the end. Almost at the same time when the allied troops surrendered, the first corps of the Imperial Guards in the west and the city guards in the north also arrived outside of Wenshan City, officially encircling the city. Seeing this, Di Chun and the others did not dare to stay any longer. They led the allied troops and their generals and retreated pathetically. Wenshan City's lord, Hao Hu Yufeng, also left with Di Chun and the others. As for the other lords of the city, seeing that their generals did not return, and not knowing what had happened at the front lines, they could only harden their hearts and leave by themselves. The huge Wenshan City became empty in an instant. With their lord gone and the city surrounded by the allied troops, the Wenshan City guards were so scared that their faces turned pale. How could they still dare to defend the city? They directly opened the city gates and surrendered. At around 5 p.m., the Shanghai city's army entered Wenshan City. At this point, the most crucial battle of the Yunnan War ended with the Allied troops and the Allied troops' defeat. After the entire battle, almost all 200,000 Allied troops died in the Yunnan battlefield. This dealt a heavy blow to the Yen-Huang alliance, and their reputation in the wilderness fell to rock bottom. The Yen-Huang alliance's plan to stop the rise of Shanghai City had completely failed. Gaia Year 4, January 7, Lingxi City. A night had passed, and the detailed battle report of Wenshan City had been placed in front of Ouyang Shua's desk. Other than obtaining a complete victory on the main battlefield, the Dragon Stallion army responsible for pursuing Zhang He's troops had also reaped great rewards. Zhang He's 10,000 allied troops were far away from the main battlefield and knew nothing about what had happened there. Thus, no matter how the Dragon Stallion army's general Mu Guiying tried to persuade them to surrender, Zhang He thought that Mu Guiying was playing trick. Helpless, Mu Guiying could only order a frontal assault. After the battle, the Allied troops suffered heavy casualties, and only less than 6,000 were captured. The Allied troops' general, Zhang He, was also defeated by Mu Guiying and unfortunately captured. After the battle, the city guards led by Yi Lai immediately returned to Yuanyang City and teleported back to Shanghai City. The Imperial Guards led by Hua Tsubing were heading north and were on their way to Lingxi City. Ouyang Shua would consider whether to send the Imperial Guards to reclaim Dongchuan Prefecture based on Swordsman City's movements. If nothing unexpected happened, the Swordsman City's army stationed at the Dongchuan Inn would make a move today. Whether it would be war or peace would depend on Feng Qingyang's strategy. The Third Corps of the Leopard Army led by Feng Yi would withdraw from Mengding Prefecture after replenishing the captive. Since Mengding Prefecture had already been captured, Feng Yi's corps would abandon their encampment at Zhen'an Prefecture and move north once more to rendezvous with the 1st and 2nd Corps of the Leopard Army stationed at Guilin Prefecture. Thus, the Yunnan battlefield would be left to the Dragon Stallion Army to clean up. Bai Qi would lead the 1st Corps of the Dragon Stallion Army and continue to oversee Wenshan City. He would be responsible for detaining the surrendered troops and coordinating with the officials of the General Administration of Military Affairs who were on their way to Wenshan City to organize the surrendered troops. At the same time, Luo Shixin would lead the 4th Corps of the Dragon Stallion Army into Tingyue Prefecture and coordinate with the Central Army and the Mountain Barbarian Army to completely capture Tingyue Prefecture. Without the Allied troops to assist in the defense of Tingyue Prefecture, the lords of the Tingyue Prefecture had either fled or died. Under the pincer attack of the three armies, the prefecture would soon fall under the control of Shanghai City. At this point, Ouyang Shua no longer needed to worry about the Yunnan battlefield. Just as the battle in Yunnan was about to end, the three local battles outside the battlefield had basically come to a conclusion. Feng Qiuhuang did not disappoint Ouyang Shua. He decisively captured Fengxiang City and smoothly occupied the entire Taiyuan province. In one leap, he had become an influential marquis of the wilderness. The Jiaozhou Fleet and the Cliff Mountain Fleet, in coordination with the two infantry divisions of the Brave Tiger Army's 3rd Corps, had already landed on Izhou Island. At the same time, the two fleets had completely sealed off the Straits of Izhou. The General Administration of Military Affairs had ordered the Lingnan War Zone to reinforce Izhou Island and coordinate with the Navy to completely capture Izhou Island. The only troublesome thing was the battle at Hardstone City. With Di Chen's return, the army of Handan City was bound to be unwilling to allow the enemy to push forward. Lao Ai was not greedy and simply used the two prefectures he had occupied as the boundary, preparing to divide Jiangwu Prefecture with Handan City. In view of the unstoppable rise of Shanghai City and the overall decline of the Yan-Huang alliance, Di Chen probably did not have the courage to fight a decisive battle with Hardstone City. Regardless of whether he was willing or not, Di Chen could only temporarily swallow the bitter fruit of war and plan for the long term. In this way, not only did the Shanghai Alliance achieve a complete victory in the Yunnan battlefield, but they also reaped great rewards outside of the main battlefield, reversing the decline of the alliance in Gaia for the past 3 years. The two alliances had once again returned to the same level. Of course, with the capture of Yunnan City, Shanghai City's position as the overlord of the China region was unshakable. Not a single member of the Yan-Huang alliance could go up against Shanghai City. To put it bluntly, Shanghai City had gradually gained the strength to fight against the entire Yan-Huang alliance alone. They were not afraid of any provocation or threat from the Yan-Huang alliance. With the end of the show, the players in the China region could only sigh in amazement. The players with foresight also realized a problem. With Yunnan city-state being wiped out, the biggest obstacle in Shanghai City's way of establishing a kingdom had been removed. In front of Shanghai City, there was a bright future ahead of them. The players had already begun to guess the establishment schedule of Shanghai City. Some said it would take a month, some even 2 months. Without exception, the players unanimously believed that Shanghai City would be established within 3 months. Such a fact really made people gasp in surprise. A commoner lord had overcome all obstacles step by step, crushing the glorious Yan-Huang alliance along the way. In the complicated environment of the China region, he was the first to reach the top. Without a doubt, Shanghai City was about to create the biggest miracle in the history of the game. Chapter 795. Gaia Year, January 11th, Lingxi City. Several days had passed since the Battle of Wenshan City. Yesterday, the Dragon Stallion Army had sent news that they had captured the entire territory of Tingyue County under the siege of 3 armies. According to the battle reports from the front lines, after the defeat of the coalition army in Wenshan City, the following siege was almost a piece of cake. Often, before the army of Shanghai City arrived, the defenders in the city would open the gates and surrender. There was almost no fighting along the way. This was the irresistible trend of the times. In this way, Tingyue County was spared the torment of war and could be considered to have escaped a calamity. It was a win-win situation for both Tingyue County and Shanghai City. At the same time, the war on Izhou Island was also nearing its end. Overlord City had already given up when the Strait of Izhou was blockaded by the 2 major fleets. Even if Xiongba returned, he would be powerless to reverse the situation. Seeing that there were no reinforcements, the resistance of Izhou Island naturally weakened. With the cooperation of the 3rd Corps of the Brave Tiger Army, the army destroyed cities and strongholds along the way. In this way, the war in the entire southern border was almost over. The end of the month was the Lunar New Year's Eve. The end of the war brought a hint of peace and auspiciousness to the Spring Festival. Moreover, the soldiers missed their loved ones during the Spring Festival, so it was not appropriate for them to continue fighting. Not only the southern border, but the entire China region would gradually stop fighting to welcome the arrival of another Spring Festival. On this day, Hua Tsubing arrived at Lingxi City with the Imperial Guards and set up camp outside the city. As early as 2 days ago, the army of Swordsman City had completely withdrawn from Dongchuan County. But before leaving, the army of Swordsman City had carried out a very disgraceful plundering operation in Dongchuan County. The rich merchants and aristocratic families of the major cities had been robbed of a layer of oil. After the incident, it was estimated that the army of Swordsman City had plundered at least 400,000 gold coins from Dongchuan County, which was not very rich in the first place. Some chambers of commerce even had no liquid funds to purchase goods and were in danger of going bankrupt. In addition, the 15,000 captives of the Imperial Guards were also brought back to Swordsman City's territory. Feng Qingyang's attitude was very clear. He did not want to confront Shanghai City head-on, nor did he have any intention of cooperating. Feng Qingyang probably thought that Shanghai City could not do anything to him if he returned to Shu. Ouyang Shua could only say, "Too naive." On the same day, Ouyang Shua sent a message to Feng Qingyang through the Daily Dispatch, demanding that Swordsman City return the captives of the Imperial Guards within a week and compensate 800,000 gold coins for the economic losses caused by the looting of Dongchuan Prefecture. Otherwise, they could only meet on the battlefield. Ouyang Shua was not joking. After the Imperial Guards arrived at Lingxi City, Hua Tsubing entered the city and had a secret conversation with Ouyang Shua. Early the next morning, the Imperial Guards once again broke camp and marched majestically towards Dongchuan County. Dongchuan Prefecture's Yongren City was a place of shame for the Imperial Guards. No one would think that Hua Tsubing was leading the Imperial Guards to Dongchuan Prefecture for fun. Even from afar, everyone could smell the scent of vengeance. The dark clouds of war that had just stopped seemed to be stirring up trouble again. Shu, Swordsman City. Unlike the other main cities, Swordsman City had a strong atmosphere of the underworld. People from the Jianghu could be seen coming and going on the street. Hundreds of martial arts schools dotted the street. It was a spectacular sight. In this atmosphere, the people in the city had a strong martial spirit. Brawls, sparring, and internal battles were happening all the time in the city. For this reason, Swordsman City imitated the Six Fan School and formed a special constable to control the people from the Jianghu. Even the central street of the city was designed in the shape of a giant sword. The hilt of the sword was the mayor's residence. In the study of the mayor's residence, Feng Qingyang was furious when he saw the Daily Dispatch report. He said fiercely, "Bastard, I've never seen such an arrogant person. Let's fight then. Who's afraid of who?" Feng Qinyue sighed in his heart when he saw his elder brother's reaction. Feng Qinyue did not expect his elder brother to be so blinded by greed that he would send an army to rob the people for a mere 400,000 gold coins. Swordsman City immediately became the laughingstock of the world when the news came out. Every lord of a territory that had survived to this point knew the importance of the people's hearts. Apart from the people's hearts in the territory, the lord's reputation outside was equally important. The reason why the Allied forces were willing to surrender to Shanghai City was because of Ouyang Shua's reputation. The Chamberlain of Dependencies even set up a department to publicize the lord's reputation. In comparison, Feng Qingyang's actions made people feel helpless. It was no wonder that after the news spread, some people joked that the Feng family was a group of martial artists who were not suitable to manage a territory and that it was better for them to submit to Liu Bei. They were filled with malice. Ouyang Shua's announcement through the Daily Dispatch shattered all of Feng Qingyang's fantasies. Shanghai City would never compromise. If Swordsman City did not agree to Shanghai City's conditions, war would be inevitable. Shanghai City had just won the war in Yunnan and was terrifyingly powerful. Even the entire Yanhuang alliance could not do anything to Shanghai City. How could a mere Swordsman City resist the ferocious army of Shanghai City? Thinking about the faces of Di Chen and the others, Feng Qinyue did not think that they would start a war with Shanghai City again for Swordsman City. The only way was to compromise. Feng Qinyue frowned at the thought of the humiliating conditions. Swordsman City was going to humiliate themselves this time. But judging from his elder brother's expression, he was afraid that he would not compromise so easily. A chaotic battle was unavoidable. Feng Qinyue looked in the direction of Yongren City, and his eyes flashed. "I'm afraid that Shanghai City's demands will not be so simple." Lingxi City. Because of the looting of Swordsman City, Ouyang Shua had no choice but to start appointing and removing personnel from the newly occupied 4 counties before the Imperial Guards arrived at Lingxi City, so that all the county governors could set off for their posts in time. Just yesterday, the Southern Border Protectorate announced a series of appointments and removals. Tian Wenjing was removed from his position as the Cheongzhou Prefectural Governor and appointed as the Mengding Prefectural Governor. Hai Rui was appointed as the new Cheongzhou Prefectural Governor. These 2 appointments had already been decided a long time ago, and there were no surprises. The only surprise was that Mengding Prefectural Governor was more dilapidated than expected. Now, it was up to Tian Wenjing, the cold-faced Prefectural Governor, to restore the people's support and the local economy in a short period of time. Ouyang Shua unexpectedly had a surplus of 1 million gold coins from the global auction that had just ended. Ouyang Shua did not keep a single cent of it and invested it all into the Yunnan province. Other than the 300,000 gold coins for the teleportation fee, the remaining 700,000 gold coins would be used to support the construction of the 3 counties in Yunnan. For Mengding County alone, 300,000 gold coins were allocated as construction funds. Dongchuan County was unexpectedly looted, and would also receive 200,000 gold coins as financial support. The remaining 200,000 gold coins were naturally invested into Tingyue County. Chao Ken was removed from the position of Kunming County's chief administrative officer and appointed as the prefectural governor of Dongchuan County. Chao Can's appointment was recommended by the prefectural governor of Kunming County, Bai Hua. Ouyang Shua had already promised Bai Hua the future governor of Yunnan Province as one of the conditions for Shanghai City to annex Lingxi City. As Bai Hua's most important administrative assistant, Chao Can, as the prime minister of the Han dynasty, was bound to play an important role in the future governor's office and hold an important position. It was precisely because of this that Bai Hua proposed to let Chao Can serve in Dongchuan County before the establishment of the Yunnan Province Governor's Office to accumulate political achievements. Chao Can was not only capable but also familiar with the situation in Yunnan and military affairs. Since it was Bai Hua who recommended Chao Can to be the prefectural governor of Dongchuan County, Ouyang Shua had no reason not to agree. Zhou Haichen, the prefectural magistrate of Laizhou County, was promoted to the prefectural governor of Tingyue County. Izhou Island was renamed Izhou County and military administration was temporarily implemented. The appointment of Izhou County's prefectural governor was postponed. Originally, Ouyang Shua was prepared to appoint Lei Fan, the magistrate of Zhili County's Duanren Prefecture, as Izhou County's prefectural governor. Unexpectedly, this appointment was not approved by the administrative department and was put on hold for further discussion. Ouyang Shua's intention to promote two native magistrates to the position of prefectural governor was truly unexpected. There was a qualitative leap from magistrate to prefectural governor. It was equivalent to the leap from city to province in reality. It was like a natural moat. If they weren't in the game, such an appointment would probably be a laughingstock. Even with Cui Shaoxi, a native, being promoted to prefectural governor, the appointment of the two people still encountered some resistance. Even if Ouyang Shua pushed hard, the administrative department would still choke him. The chief of the administrative department, Xiao He, had doubts about the two new prefectural governors, especially about Lei Fan. Zhou Haichen was, after all, a proper prefectural governor from the wilderness. He had served as the assistant chief of the administrative department, Yi County Magistrate, and Lei Mountain Magistrate. His resume was complete and he was a meritorious elder of the territory. But Lei Fan? Born as a mountain barbarian, he had never properly studied for more than a few days in his life. His only academic resume was 2 months of advanced studies at Southwest University China Hall. In the eyes of Xiao He and the others, mountain barbarians were synonymous with ignorance. It was ridiculous for them to be promoted to a high-ranking official. As such, Zhou Haichen's appointment was barely approved, but Lei Fan's appointment was stuck. Ouyang Shua could not ignore the opinions of Xiao He and the other officials. If he really did that, the whole system would not be able to operate effectively and it might even shake the territory's foundation. If Ouyang Shua forcefully ordered the administrative department to approve Lei Fan's appointment, Xiao He would have to resign. This was something Ouyang Shua did not want to see. For this reason, Ouyang Shua had no choice but to personally send a letter to Xiao He to discuss this appointment. He suggested that the administrative department of personnel send out an inspection team to conduct a political evaluation on Lei Fan. This matter would be discussed after the evaluation results were out. Since the Lord Ouyang Shua took the initiative to take a step back, Xiao He naturally would not be tactful and agreed to this proposal. Just the day before yesterday, the inspection team led by Zhang Tingyu had entered Duanren Mansion. Without a doubt, this appointment would become a landmark in the history of the territory's development. The conflict and cooperation between the monarch and the prime minister would become the norm in the territory's future officialdom. To Ouyang Shua, the test and experience had just begun. Chapter 796. As the appointment of the county governors was announced, Zhou Haiqin entered the public eye and became the most popular person in the territory. Zhou Haiqin's background and resume were thoroughly investigated. Cui Shaoxi, who had been promoted to prefectural governor, had the support of the Cui clan and the first princess of the protectorate, Cui Yingyu, as a mediator. Zhou Haiqin was different. He came to the territory as a refugee. He had no relatives or friends in the territory. He relied on his own hard work and Jun Shang's appreciation to get to where he was today. The only connection was that he had been trained by Fan Zhongyan when he was in the administrative office. Ouyang Shua still remembered that he had weighed the pros and cons between Zhou Haiqin and Qin Shijian when he was establishing the subsidiary territory of Friendship County. In the end, Zhou Haiqin was appointed as the Yu County Magistrate, and Qin Shijian as the head of the Administrative Department Merit Examination. To this day, Zhou Haiqin was already a high-ranking military official, while Qin Shijian was still the chief of the Examination Department. However, at this time, the Merit Examination Department was already a department under the administration of officials under the General Administration of Administration. From the looks of it, going down to the ground to gain experience would be a better way to gain political achievements and be promoted. As for the twists and turns in the appointment of Lei Fan, due to the protection of Lei Fan, only Ouyang Shua, Xiao He, Zhang Tingyu, and a few others knew about it. Outsiders did not know the inside story. Even Lei Fan himself did not know much about this. Ouyang Shua considered promoting Lei Fan to the county chief of Yizhou. Firstly, when Shanghai City took over Yunnan City, they did not find any outstanding historical talent. Secondly, Lei Fan was born in the mountain barbarian tribe, so he was very familiar with the multi-ethnic policy of the territory. It was beneficial for him to work in Yizhou County, which was dominated by the indigenous high mountain tribe. In addition, Ouyang Shua also had political considerations to appease the mountain barbarians. Ouyang Shua was the barbarian king, and the mountain barbarian warriors had continuously made contributions on the battlefield. It was time to give the barbarian mountain tribe more authority. Lei Fan's advancement would undoubtedly further increase the mountain barbarian tribe's loyalty and cohesiveness towards their territory. This would also lay a solid foundation for subduing the barbarians of Shu in the future. Of course, Xiao He's concerns were not without reason. Before Lei Fan became the Gushan County Magistrate, he was only a tribal chief. He had never received an orthodox education, so he was naturally flawed. However, just based on this point alone, Lei Fan could not be vetoed. In history, how could there be a few who were born in the wilderness who eventually became generals and ministers? Even Xiao He himself was just an inconspicuous county official in Pei County at the very beginning. Meritocracy referred to one's abilities, not one's birth. Ouyang Shua was confident in Lei Fan. The evaluation team led by Zhang Tingyu would bring Xiao He a pleasant surprise. Gaia 4th year, January 15th. Dongchuan County. It could be said that Dongchuan Prefecture had been plagued with disasters during this period of time. First, it was plowed by the Imperial Guard. Then, it was destroyed by the Allied Army and the Allied Army. Finally, the Army of Swordsman City stirred up trouble in the territory. The Swordsman City's army did not stay for long before the Imperial Guards returned. The common people of Dongchuan County were suffering unspeakably. Because of the lack of information in ancient times, the common people did not know the war situation in Yunnan. Every morning when they woke up, they did not know which hero was ruling this city. On this day, Hua Tsubing led the Imperial Guards to the outskirts of Yongren City. The corpses outside the city had already been cleared by the system. The land that was dyed red with blood was proof that a great war had taken place not long ago. The soldiers of the 1st Regiment of the Imperial Guards were in a daze. Many of them had been buried here before, but were miraculously resurrected and once again set foot on this blood-stained land. Yongren City was a place of shame that the Imperial Guards could not erase. As soon as the Imperial Guards stepped into Dongchuan Prefecture, the Lord of Yongren City had already abandoned the city and fled. The Yunnan city-state had already disbanded, and the Yanhuang alliance had also been defeated by Shanghai City. Facing the menacing and vengeful Imperial Guards of Shanghai City, the Lord of Yongren City could not think of anyone else who could help him. Although Feng Qingyang was arrogant, the army of Swordsman City did not even stay here. They quickly returned to Sichuan and stationed themselves 50 miles away from the border. It was obvious that they did not want to fight the army of Shanghai City. Staying here at this time was no different from waiting for death. The Lord of Yongren City was decisive. He packed up his belongings and ran away. As for the promise that the Yanhuang alliance had given him before the war, he was not going to fulfill it. If he tried to reason with the Yanhuang alliance now, he would probably be eaten alive by Di Chen and the others. Ever since the end of the war in Wenshan City, the China Forum had not stopped. Discussions about the war, the post-war structure of China, and the future of the two alliances were endless. However, there was one thing that was surprisingly consistent. No matter what they were discussing, they were all optimistic about the future of Shanghai City and the Yanhuang alliance. The water army that the Yanhuang alliance had hired wanted to make their presence known and speak up for their master. They wanted to change the direction of public opinion, but they were immediately drowned out by other players. Such a serious situation was something that Di Chen and the others had never encountered before. Some well-informed people said that the members of the Yanhuang alliance had been meeting frequently in the past few days. They were probably thinking of ways to resolve the crisis at hand. At this time, if the Lord of Yongren City were to go against Di Chen and the others, he would be courting death. Therefore, seeing that the Imperial Guards had arrived outside the city, the only remaining city guards in Yongren City immediately left the city and surrendered. Along with the city guard brigade, the city's gentry and wealthy merchants also came out of the city to welcome them. There were hundreds of them. Huatsubing did not know whether to laugh or cry at their first question. "General, since you're here, you won't be leaving, right?" When he asked this, he looked very nervous. Huatsubing laughed in his heart. He did not have a good impression of Yongren City. However, as the commander of the army, not only did he have to understand military affairs, he also had to consider the interests of the territory. The commander represented more than just military power. "Don't worry. The entire Yunnan city has already been conquered by our army. Do you think we can still leave?" The moment the news came out, the hearts of the wealthy merchants trembled. Wow, so the southern Cloud province has really changed. With this thought in mind, the wealthy merchants finally heaved a sigh of relief and were no longer on tenterhooks. To them, the most important thing was not who ruled the city. The most important thing was stability. "All hail the general! Please come in! Please come in!" The aristocrats and merchants immediately put on brilliant smiles. However, Huatsubing did not fall for this. He was born noble and did not like to interact with merchants. Moreover, as the saying goes, once bitten, twice shy. Huatsubing would not recklessly barge into the city. Although the spies from the Bureau of Military Intelligence had confirmed that the Lord of Yongren City had indeed left, the territory stone tablet was still standing in the Castellan's residence and the teleportation portal was still working. No one could guarantee that Yanhuang alliance wouldn't launch another sneak attack. Huatsubing arranged for a battalion to enter the city first and destroy the territory stone tablet. Only then could he lead his troops into the city with confidence and officially complete the occupation of Yongren City. However, Huatsubing was overthinking things. Di Chen and the others really did not have such thoughts at the moment. That night, the wealthy merchants in the city jointly invited the generals of the Imperial Guards to a banquet. Huatsubing could not refuse. Although the attitudes of these wealthy merchants were humble, it did not mean that they were insignificant. If the officials sent by Shanghai City wanted to govern Yongren City well, they would need the support of these people. The wilderness had already belonged to Gaia for 4 years, and was no longer Gaia for 1 year. Even in the player's territory, there were all sorts of social classes and complicated entanglement. It was no longer the era where a new official could wipe out all sorts of evil people as soon as he took office. Otherwise, Ouyang Shuo would not have started a month-long inspection right after the Battle of Lingnan. It was to appease the people, and at the same time, deal with the wealthy merchants. In the heat of the wine, the true colors of the merchants were revealed. A merchant held a glass of wine and approached Hua Tsubing. With his signature merchant smile on his face, he bowed and said, "General, I am Zhu Jin. I do some small business in the city. Allow me to offer you a toast." As he spoke, he was the first to drink. Hua Tsubing remained calm and raised his glass. "Zhu Jin, Zhu Banqing. You monopolize more than 90% of the cloth, sesame oil, and rice business in Yongren City. Your personal wealth can buy half of Yongren City. You call that small business?" How could Hua Tsubing not do his homework before attending such a banquet? Although Hua Tsubing did not like to interact with merchants, it did not mean that he could not handle such a situation. On the contrary, the other imperial guards were all very uneasy under the merchants' praises, wine, and delicacies. Only Hua Tsubing was leisurely sitting at the head of the table, with the demeanor of a noble young master. Hua Tsubing was able to handle the merchants with ease. During the day, the mountain sea guards had sent detailed information to Hua Tsubing. Zhu Jin was highlighted and the information was the most detailed. He was not a refugee from Yongren City. He was the president of a merchant association that the Lord of Yongren City had recruited from Dali City at a great cost. It was because of this that Zhu Jin could monopolize the cloth and rice business in the player cities. Without a doubt, he was the representative of the Yongren City merchants. How could Hua Tsubing underestimate such a god of wealth? Zhu Jin did not mind being exposed. This was something he had expected in the first place. Seeing Hua Tsubing drink the wine in his glass, Zhu Jin's smile widened. "Great General, you flatter me. I dare not say anything else, but if the army needs any supplies, I can still help." As he spoke, Zhu Jin's tone suddenly changed and he put on a long face. "To tell you the truth, before the damn Swordsman City army left, they robbed us clean and emptied our vaults and warehouses. We can't even pay the salaries of our workers and are about to close down. Now that the Protectorate is in power, don't you think it's time for them to compensate us?" "Yes, yes, yes." The people around him immediately echoed. Obviously, this was the purpose of inviting Hua Tsubing to a banquet. It was not to comfort the soldiers as they said. Hearing this, Hua Tsubing cursed in his heart, shameless merchants. How could they think of this? How could they expect Shanghai City to compensate them after they were robbed by Swordsman City? Chapter 797. Hua Tsubing controlled his temper and looked around at the merchants. "I am only in charge of military affairs. I have no right to answer your questions. As for the compensation, you will have to discuss it with the incoming prefectural magistrate." Zhu Jin knew that he would not be able to gain any favor from Hua Tsubing, so he smiled and changed the topic. The feast at Hongmen, which had a hidden edge, was held in a bustling manner. Hua Tsubing was still clear-headed and summoned the generals for a meeting that night. Today was the deadline for Swordsman City to return the captured soldiers and compensate 800,000 gold coins. Obviously, Swordsman City did not intend to comply. Shanghai City had no choice but to resort to force. Back in the tent, the generals felt much more at ease and sobered up. Hua Tsubing sat at the head of the table and said, "Tomorrow morning, the army will break camp and enter Shu. Before that, I would like the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau to introduce the basic situation of Shu." He gestured to a young man sitting at the head of the table. According to Shanghai City's military structure, the Military Intelligence Bureau under the General Administration of Military Affairs was headquartered in Shanghai City. Each of the four armies had a military intelligence division under the command of both the Military Intelligence Bureau and the Army commander. The young man nodded and opened a map. It was the map of Shu drawn by the Military Intelligence Bureau and the Shanghai Guard. The entire Shu is divided into two large areas, the Western Highlands and the Eastern Plains, with the Qionglai Mountains as the boundary. The Western Highlands are filled with rolling hills and valleys. The valleys are wide and round, and the swamps are more than 4,000 meters above sea level. This area is inhabited by the Chang people and is known as the Chang County. To the west of the Western Highlands is the mysterious Tufan Kingdom. The Eastern Plains is a huge basin surrounded by mountain ranges. It is the main area of Shu and is densely populated with cities and towns. It is known as the Heavenly Province. Other than the Chang County, the rest of the 5 counties are located in the Eastern Plains. Chengdu County is the center of the 4 counties. To the north of Chengdu County is Hanzhong County, to the east is Badong County, and to the south is Jiangyang County. Among the 4 counties, Hanzhong County is jointly occupied by 3 feudal lords, forming the Hanzhong Alliance. Chengdu County is occupied by the Shu Han Dynasty, while Badong County and Jiangyang County belong to Swordsman City. Chengdu County and Badong County are located in the center of the basin. The terrain is flat and fertile, and they are the essence of Sichuan. Hanzhong County and Jiangyang County were located at the north and south ends of the basin. The territory was densely covered with hills, plains and hills, making it easy to defend and hard to attack. These 2 counties can also be regarded as the northern and southern gates of Chengdu. Hearing this, a general asked, "Does this mean that as long as we take down Jiangyang County, the southern gateway, the entire Shu will be exposed to our army without any barriers?" "Not bad. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and attack." The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau shook his head. "It's not that simple. It was precisely because of the strategic position of Jiangyang County that Swordsman City established its main city at the northern end of the county, guarding the last barrier in the south. The pass where Swordsman City was located was already comparable to the Sword Gate Pass at the junction of Hanzhong County and Chengdu County in the north. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, Swordsman City invested a huge sum of money last year to build more than 40 passes of various sizes in Jiangyang County. Every city is separated by a pass, and they are heavily guarded." Hiss, the generals sucked in a breath of cold air. This kind of defense using the pass as a node was simply terrifying. The only thing that could pose a threat to such a pass was probably the P1 cannon. However, the mountain roads of Shu were rugged, and some areas did not even have road. They could only pass through the mountains and the top of the cliff. It was extremely difficult to transport the cannon that weighed several tons to the designated location. This was also the reason why Feng Qingyang was so fearless. The reputation of Shu being easy to defend and hard to attack was not just for show. "Continue," Hua Tsubing said at this moment. "Yes, sir." The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau nodded and continued. "The closest city to Yongren City in Jiangyang County is called Black Iron City. It got its name because of the huge amount of iron ore it produces. There is only a rugged mountain road between Yongren City and Black Iron City. Both sides are high mountains and dangerous peaks. There is a pass near Black Iron City called Aolong Pass. Previously, Swordsman City stationed 40,000 soldiers in Dongchuan County, but they retreated to Aolong Pass. Apart from the 40,000 soldiers, there is also a city guard division stationed in Black Iron City. Apart from that, there is another 30,000 soldiers on their way to Black Iron City and will arrive in a few days." "What is the total military strength of Swordsman City?" Hua Tsubing suddenly asked. Apart from the Imperial Guard Division and the City Guard Division, Swordsman City has 2 field armies. The First Army is stationed in Badong County, and the Second Army is stationed in Jiangyang County. Generally speaking, a county in the wilderness could only support one field army at most. Including the Imperial Guard, City Guard, and local garrison troops, it was basically reaching its limit. Take Shanghai City as an example. Before the Battle of Yunnan, there were a total of 13 counties, including Qing Province County. In the army, including the City Guard and Imperial Guards, there were exactly 13 field armies. Of course, Shanghai City was a special case. Its foundation was much deeper than the other territories, and its main city was already a third-class county. Therefore, it was able to establish a large-scale Nanyang Navy in addition to the army. Even so, the financial pressure on Shanghai City was immense. The 5 great fleets of the Nanyang Navy would not be expanding or forming new fleets for a period of time. If there were any changes, it would be the remodeling of the 5 great fleets, as well as the upgrading of warships and weapons. Apart from the warmongers, very few lords would cross this red line. Correspondingly, a province in the wilderness could at most accommodate a full 5 corps of a combined army. The only special one was the capital city. China's 9 capital cities could support an army of nearly 1 million with just one county. It was because of Gaia's cheat, or else it would be unimaginable. Similarly, the number of players in the capital city was also the same. A capital city could accommodate tens of millions of players without collapsing. It was unimaginable in ancient times. Without Gaia's special settings, how could it be achieved? Shanghai City, which had the highest level among the territory's main cities, was still struggling to reach the population limit of 2 million. For Swordsman City to be able to form 2 field corps in addition to the Imperial Guard Division and the City Guard Division was already an impressive achievement. After all, Swordsman City was not known for managing territories. When Huatsubing heard this, he raised his eyebrows and said calmly, "In other words, Swordsman City has put the entire military force of Jiangyang County into battle with us? That seems to be the case for now. They're too confident. Do they think they can stop us with just 1 corps?" Ma Chao said indignantly. Huatsubing shook his head and said, "The enemy has the geographical advantage, and they're mainly defending. Furthermore, they're fighting on their home ground. You must not underestimate them." The Imperial Guard Division was mainly composed of cavalry, so they were not good at mountain warfare and siege warfare. The only offensive troops they could bring out were the 2 mountain barbarian heavy infantry divisions. It would not be easy to take down Black Iron City. The key was still time. In Lingxi City, the Emperor had clearly instructed that if Swordsman City was unwilling to submit, they had to end the war before New Year's Eve. They could not let this local war drag on until after New Year's Eve. Calculating the time, it would be less than half a month at most. In other words, this war had to be efficient and painful for Swordsman City. The Emperor had given the Imperial Guard a difficult problem. However, no matter how difficult it was, Huatsubing had to complete it beautifully. This concerned the honor of the Imperial Guard Division. Is there any other way to enter Black Iron City other than the mountain roads? Huatsubing asked the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau. The head of the Military Intelligence Bureau nodded and said, "Yes. There's a large river called the Jinsha River 80 miles east of Yongren City. If you follow the river upstream, you can directly reach Black Iron City. Moreover, it's dry season right now, so the water flow is calm and not as turbulent as during flood season." "Is there any difficulty?" Huatsubing asked. "Yes. When Swordsman City's army retreated from Dongchuan County, they burned all the large ships in the county in advance. It's difficult for us to transport the army by water in such a short time." Huatsubing was speechless for a while. At this moment, he missed the territory's navy. However, the 5 major fleets were all stationed along the coast, and none of them were active inland. He really wanted to help, but could not. Even if he asked for help now, it would be too late. "Can we gather civilian boats?" someone suggested. Huotsubing shook his head. Not only were the boats limited, but they were also very unsafe. If they were not careful, the boats would be destroyed and the people would die. Moreover, how many boats would be needed to transport an army of hundreds of thousands? It would probably fill up the entire Jinsha River. Apart from transporting the soldiers, they also had to transport rations and supplies, which was even more difficult. The only way was to transport a surprise army of a few thousand people by water. The Imperial Guard Division was equipped with military rations, which were more than enough to support a few thousand troops for a few days. Are there any spies in Black Iron City? Huotsubing asked the head of the Military Intelligence Bureau. Yes. As long as the army is at the city gates, the spies are confident that they can even open the city gate. During the Battle of Yongran City, the three major intelligence agencies were scolded by the Emperor for their intelligence errors. Since then, they naturally became courageous and prepared to atone for their mistake. The three major intelligence agencies simultaneously strengthened their infiltration of Shu, and Black Iron City was naturally the first to bear the brunt. Moreover, Black Iron City's main livelihood was mining. The population was messy, and the management was chaotic, making it easier for spies to infiltrate. Huotsubing's eyes flashed. He looked at Shi Hu and said, "I'll give you 5,000 elites. Are you confident that you can launch a surprise attack on Black Iron City?" It was more convenient for infantry to travel by water. War horses could not be transported by small boats. 5,000 elite soldiers was the limit that small boats could transport. Shi Hu did not even think about it. He immediately stood up and replied, "No problem." To the mountain barbarians this was a great honor. Huotsubing nodded and began to arrange a detailed battle plan. The generals listened attentively. If they wanted a surprise attack to succeed, they had to formulate a series of coordinated measures. It was not until late at night that the generals left. Chapter 798. Gaia 4th Year, 17th of the 1st month, Yongran City. At daybreak, more than 100,000 Imperial Guards crossed the border of Dongchuan County and advanced into Swordsman City's territory, initiating a war with Swordsman City. The vast army formed a long dragon that advanced along the winding mountain roads, its vanguard heading straight for Awalong Pass. At the same time, Shi Hu led the 5,000 mountain barbarian warriors toward Jinsha River, avoiding all eyes and ears. Near the Jinsha River, a large number of ships were secretly requisitioned by local officials and concentrated at the river crossings. The war that had just died down in the southwest was once again ignited. At the same time, Shi Wansue's 2nd Dragon Stallion Army and Luo Shixin's 4th Dragon Army had already left Tingyue County and were heading north to Dongchuan County, ready to enter the war in Shu at any time. The cleanup of Tingyue County was left to Zhang Liao's 3rd Dragon Stallion Army. The 2nd and 4th Dragon Stallion Armies' main forces guarding the northern part of Yunnan Province. Due to the war in Shu, Shanghai City's new army reorganization had yet to take place. Ouyang Shua planned to wait until the Battle of Black Iron City ended and the Imperial Guard captives were brought back. Then, he would convene the 4 corps commanders and Navy Governor Jing, he to discuss the reorganization of the army. This arrangement would also be the embryonic form of the highest military organization in the future. According to the preliminary calculations of the General Administration of Military Affairs, after deducting the casualties from the various departments and the mountain barbarian warriors of Tingyue County, it was estimated that 3 or 4 field corps could be formed. How to distribute them was a big problem. The 4 corps naturally hoped to fight for 1 or 2 spots, but the specific distribution would depend on the next step of the territory's strategy. Shu, Swordsman City. The Imperial Guard will be the vanguard and the Dragon Stallion Army will be the backup. In order to get these prisoners of war back, Shanghai City has mobilized 4 field legions. Feng Qingyang could not remain calm after listening to the military report. Feng Qingyue said, "Big brother, it's not too late to negotiate." Negotiate? No, wait until they take Awalong Pass. How will the Imperial Guard of Shanghai City attack the pass? Feng Qingyang was someone who cared a great deal about his reputation, or else he would not have been so stubborn. Feng Qingyue shook his head. Even if the Imperial Guard can't do anything to Awalong Pass for the time being, what if the 2 legions of the Dragon Stallion army reach the front lines? Even if the Aolong Pass was an impregnable fortress, it would still be destroyed by the Shanghai City's army. Don't forget, not only do they have a new type of cannon, but they also have a flying squad. Shanghai City has 100 ways to deal with a pass like Awalong Pass. In the Battle of Guilin County, didn't the 3 passes fall just like that? If the enemy really took down the Awalong Pass and pointed their sword at Black Iron City, the situation would become unsalvageable. If the 4 great armies of Shanghai City were to enter Shu, they would be able to conquer the entire Jiangyang County. Big brother, do you want to gamble with the fate of the territory? Feng Qingyang was speechless for a long time. In fact, Feng Qingyang was feeling a little regretful, but he could not admit defeat because of his pride. Yesterday, he had tried to probe the attitude of Di Chen and the others, but all of them were hesitant and didn't want to talk about sending troops. In the Yan-Huang alliance, the swordsman city was independent and had always been outside of the alliance. If it wasn't for the contribution of the secret martial arts manuals, the Feng clan wouldn't even be able to become one of the 6 major powers in the China region. There was a natural barrier between the swordsman city and the other territories of the Yan-Huang alliance. Especially after the news of the ambiguous attitude between the swordsman city and the Shu Han dynasty, Di Chen and the others became even more distant from the swordsman city. Now that the Shanghai City's army was attacking, how could Di Chen and the others send troops to help the swordsman city? Before this, Feng Qingyang did not have a clear understanding of the Shanghai City. Until this time, the enemy had mobilized 4 great armies into Shu, and their military strength was twice that of the swordsman cities. Only then did Feng Qingyang truly feel the gap between the 2 sides. If it wasn't for the Yan-Huang alliance, the swordsman city was nothing in front of the Shanghai City. This kind of understanding was undoubtedly very depressing. Feng Qingyang looked up at his sister and said with a slightly sinister expression, "If the Shanghai City dares to attack Black Iron City, I will kill all 15,000 prisoners of war. Please don't." Feng Qingyue turned pale with fright and said in horror, "The Imperial Guards are the glory of the Shanghai City, and also their face. Once we kill the prisoners of war, we will not rest until one of us is dead. A local war is enough to give us a headache. As for an all-out war, it will be enough to drag the swordsman city to eternal damnation." Feng Qingyang's expression froze and he said awkwardly, "I was just saying." Feng Qingyue's eyes shone brightly and she said solemnly, "I hope you're just saying. Big brother, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't ever have such thoughts." Feng Qingyue looked at him worriedly and asked, "Big brother, did something happen to your cultivation recently? Why do you feel so restless?" The martial art that Feng Qingyang was cultivating was no longer the Feng clan's secret art. It was a secret manual that he obtained in the game, and it was extremely strange. Feng Qingyue was worried that something had gone wrong with her brother's cultivation. In history, there were many people who had a huge change in temperament due to a problem in their cultivation. Thinking about the strangeness of that secret manual, Feng Qingyue's worry was not groundless. Unexpectedly, when Feng Qingyang heard this, he immediately asked her to leave. He waved his hand impatiently and a trace of hostility flashed across his face. "All right, let me think about it. Let me think about it. You can leave first." When Feng Qingyue heard this, she silently looked at her brother and got up to leave. "I better report to father. I can't let big brother do anything that can't be dealt with." With this thought in mind, Feng Qingyue left for the West Court. The West Court was the residence of the Feng clan's elders. The environment was quiet and secluded, and it was the most suitable place for cultivation. The people of the Feng clan were a bunch of martial arts fanatics. Even when they entered the game, they mainly focused on practicing martial art. They did not care much about the matters in the wilderness. Even the foundation of the clan was left to the two juniors, Feng Qingyang and Feng Qingyue. This indirectly caused Feng Qingyang to have an unruly character. Of course, even if they did not care, the words of the older generation still carried a lot of weight if something really happened. West Court, Sky Sword Academy. The head of the Feng clan, Feng Xiaotian, was less than 50 years old. He was tall and sturdy, with a ruddy face and bright eyes. One look and anyone could tell that he had a profound cultivation. After listening to his daughter's report, Feng Xiaotian frowned and said, "I didn't expect Qingyang to cause such trouble. I'm really disappointed that he doesn't even know that the clan is in danger. Father, I'm worried that something happened to Big Brother's cultivation. He might be arrogant in the past, but he won't be stubborn to the end. This is a bit too much." Feng Qingyue did not add insult to injury. Feng Xiaotian nodded and said, "The situation you mentioned is not impossible. The sky demon tactics that Qingyang cultivates is incomplete, and it's also a demonic cultivation method. If he's not careful, he might go astray. How about this, I'll go check on Qingyang tonight." Not to mention anything else, Feng Qingyang was indeed a genius in martial arts. Not only did he have an outstanding foundation, but he also had a strong comprehension ability. He could easily understand any profound and obscure technique. Take the sky demon tactics for example. In the entire Feng clan, Feng Qingyang was the only one who could understand its essence. Feng Xiaotian was quite proud of his son and saw him as the hope of the clan's future rise. How could Feng Xiaotian not be nervous when he heard that Feng Qingyang might have encountered a problem with his cultivation? Feng Qingyue nodded and left. Feng Xiaotian looked pensive as he watched his daughter's back. January 19th, Aolong Pass. Regardless of what happened to the Feng clan, the Imperial Guard's pace of attack was not affected at all. In just 2 days, the vanguard of the Imperial Guards arrived at Aolong Pass. The vanguard of the army was the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division. Considering that the mountain road was rugged and long, the army was extremely vulnerable to attack, especially the cavalry. Once they were disturbed, there was no room to turn around on the mountain road, and it was easy to cause chaos. This was one of the reasons why Sichuan had always been difficult to conquer. The Imperial Guards were able to pass through because the map in the game was 10 times larger. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have this mountain road and could only march along the Jinsha River Valley. The valley was steep, and in some places, only plank roads could be built on the cliffs. Even walking was a miracle, not to mention fighting. Therefore, Huatsubing did not send the entire army forward. Only the mountain barbarian soldiers were marching at high speed. The 2nd Imperial Guard Corps was even stationed at the border, maintaining pressure and deterrence against Aolong Pass. The Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division arrived at the pass, but did not attack immediately. The mountain road was rugged and steep, and it was impossible to transport large-scale siege weapons. Without siege weapons, it was almost impossible to take down this dangerous pass. After the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division set up camp, the first thing they did was to cooperate with the Imperial Guard's Engineering Battalion to gather local materials, cut down trees, and build siege weapons on the spot. When the garrison at Aolong Pass saw this, they naturally mocked them. With such a dangerous pass, in the eyes of the garrison, they could completely sit back and relax. Of course, it was also impossible for them to take the initiative to attack the Mountain Barbarian Division. The Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division's reputation had long spread throughout the wilderness. Even though the Allied army had cheated the Mountain Barbarians outside Yongren City, the garrison at Aolong Pass did not dare to be presumptuous. Those who knew a little about the inside story knew that in that battle, the Allied army had an absolute advantage in terms of military strength, and they had completely surrounded the mountain barbarians, but they were still at a disadvantage in a direct confrontation with the mountain barbarians. After paying a greater sacrifice than the mountain barbarians, they finally got rid of this hard bone. The current garrison of 40,000 would not dare to fight the mountain barbarians even if they had the guts. The first confrontation between Shanghai City and Swordsman City had begun with such a strange situation. The mountain barbarian soldiers were unhurriedly building siege weapons outside the pass, while the garrison inside the pass was leisurely watching the excitement. The scene did not have the slightest tension that a war should have. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 799. The leisurely atmosphere in front of Aolong Pass did not last long. On the 21st of January, the third day after the Barbarian Mountain Division arrived at Aolong Pass, the war entered the fast lane. With the help of limited siege equipment, the Barbarian Mountain Division launched the first wave of attack on Aolong Pass. The powerful Barbarian Mountain Division, even with simple siege equipment, could form a fierce attack, beating the garrison of Aolong Pass into a sorry state. After a big battle, the casualties of both sides were actually about the same. It was truly terrifying. At the same time, rumbling sounds came from the sky above Aolong Pass. On this day, the aerial squadron finally arrived at the front line and assisted the Imperial Guards in attacking Aolong Pass. The first time the aerial squadron appeared at Guiping Pass, it attracted the attention of the Lord of the Wilderness. How to defend against the incendiary bombs dropped by the aerial squadron had already become an urgent task for the cities and fortresses in the wilderness. The most long-term plan was naturally to use stone or bricks instead of wood. The incendiary bombs developed by Shanghai City could not compare to the incendiary bombs in the real world. Without combustibles, the effect would be greatly reduced. For a city, it was not realistic to use all stone. But for a fortress, it was still relatively easy to build a building without wood. However, Aolong Pass had not adopted such a measure. After the outbreak of war, Feng Qingyue urgently ordered the garrison to clean up as much as possible the combustibles in the fortress. All wooden buildings were to be torn down. The large flames rising from Aolong Pass proved that the fortress did not completely carry out Feng Qingyue's orders. Asking them to tear down the buildings was really too much. Starting from 9 in the morning, the aerial squadron used Yongren City as a temporary supply base and launched a continuous bombardment of Aolong Pass. Coupled with the Barbarian Mountain Division's attack, Aolong Pass immediately fell into a dangerous situation. Inside the fortress, besides the buildings, there were also temporary military tents. In order to prevent the fire from spreading, more than half of the garrison's energy was put into extinguishing the fire. As a result, the garrison became more and more powerless against the fierce attacks of the Barbarian Mountain Division. In just one morning, there were 3 dangerous situations on the city wall, almost being broken through by the Barbarian Mountain Division. This startled the garrison into a cold sweat. They no longer dared to slack off, desperately defending while requesting reinforcements from Black Iron City. Because of this, the 30,000 reinforcements that had just arrived at Black Iron City did not dare to stop and directly rushed towards Aolong Pass. Once Aolong Pass fell, Swordsman City's Second Corps would not have the confidence to defend Black Iron City. Just as the Swordsman City's army was gathering at Aolong Pass, Sure, who was leading the ambush army upstream. With the help of the aerial team, Hua Tsubing's overall plan was successfully implemented. The 2nd Legion of Swordsman City was lured to Aolong Pass. If nothing unexpected happened, the fall of Black Iron City was only a matter of time. Jiangyang County, Swordsman City. The battle at Aolong Pass was in full swing, but the swordsman's city did not give any instructions. It was all up to the frontline generals to decide. This was not because the Feng clan was slow or arrogant, it was because there was a big change in the clan. That night, Feng Xiaotian and 2 elders from the clan conducted a checkup on Feng Qingyang. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't checked, but the moment he did, he was shocked. Feng Qingyang was already on the verge of turning into a demon, and it would be too late to save him now. Feng Qingyang was the hope of the Feng family's rise in the game. Now, the Feng family was in chaos. Even the great elder, who had been cultivating in seclusion, was alarmed. The 4 elders worked together to treat Feng Qingyang for 2 days and 2 nights before they managed to slightly control the violent true qi in his body. However, Feng Qingyang still had to slowly recuperate himself in order to completely remove the demonic qi. Feng Xiaotian did not dare to be negligent. He immediately arranged for Feng Qingyang to go into seclusion and no longer manage the territory's affairs. During this period, the entire swordsman city was in a state of idleness. Now that Feng Qingyang was in seclusion, someone had to manage the huge territory. Feng Xiaotian had no choice but to leave the mountain and personally take charge. As the patriarch, Feng Xiaotian was not good at managing the territory. Otherwise, he would not have thrown all the territory's affairs to Feng Qingyang and Feng Qinyue. As soon as he took office, there was an overwhelming amount of government affairs, which made Feng Xiaotian dizzy. He could not even calm down during his daily cultivation and almost went berserk. In just 3 days, Feng Xiaotian had lost a lot of weight. At this time, Feng Xiaotian had to admit that he was not as good as his son, Feng Qingyang, in terms of territory management. Dragons give birth to dragons, and mice give birth to phoenixes. The father and son were of the same lineage. With this delay, the battle at the Aolong Pass had entered a critical period. Seeing this, Feng Xiaotian gritted his teeth and decided to let Feng Qinyue take over the territory as the temporary overlord. As an ancient martial arts family, the Feng clan was inevitably biased towards sons and daughters. The clan rules were rigid and conservative. Although Feng Qinyue's talent in managing the territory was far better than his brother, he could only participate in the territory's affairs as an advisor and had no authority to make decisions. Feng Qingyang went into seclusion, so Feng Xiaotian subconsciously took over the territory's management authority. He had never thought of handing the territory over to Feng Qinyue. It was only when Feng Xiaotian realized that he could not handle the territory's affairs that he came to a realization and used this rare opportunity to let Feng Qinyue take over. Even so, the clan elders still objected. One had to admit that Feng Xiaotian's decision was very wise. It prevented the swordsman city from being destroyed. When the storm in the Feng clan gradually subsided, it was already the 24th day of the first month. Feng Qinyue took over the territory's authority and had mixed feelings. When she understood the situation at the front line and was about to summon the Shanghai city's diplomatic group to propose a peace negotiation, the front line had already undergone a shocking change. Feng Qinyue was speechless for a long time. Her face turned pale. "I'm still too late. Let's go back to 2 days ago." On the evening of the 22nd, the surging Golden Sand River surged ceaselessly. The river water was mixed with a large amount of sand and sand. Under the sunset, it appeared to be a mesmerizing golden yellow. This was the origin of the name Golden Sand River. On the river's surface, more than 1,000 small boats sailed forward. It was a spectacular sight. Sure, who led 5,000 mountain barbarian elites upstream and finally arrived near the Black Iron City. Black Iron City was built on the southern bank of the Golden Sand River, and the river flowed around the city. The 5,000 mountain barbarians quietly disembarked when they were 20 miles away from Black Iron City. Thousands of small boats floated down the river and soon disappeared into the sunset. "Rest for half an hour. Be careful to conceal yourselves," Sure who ordered. The mountain barbarians were a group of landlubbers. It was the first time for some of the warriors to ride on a boat. Moreover, it was such a small boat. Being tossed up and down on the vast river and rocking left and right was not a pleasant experience. If not for the mountain barbarians' strong physiques, their legs would have turned to jelly by now. Just as the army was resting, an inconspicuous hummingbird accurately found Sure Hu and perched on his shoulder with an intimate expression. The hummingbird was originally introduced by the mystic bird tribe where Sure Hu was. The two of them had a natural resonance. Otherwise, the hummingbird would not have been able to accurately find Sure Hu. The information transmitted by the hummingbird shocked Sure Hu. The Shanghai Guard's spies in Black Iron City had confirmed that the East City Gate would be opened at 8 o'clock that night. The city gate would be opened in 15 minutes at most. The army, please seize the opportunity. 10 minutes? That's enough. Sure Hu looked at the sky and ordered the army to set off. They quietly advanced toward Black Iron City. At 7:15, the army had already concealed themselves in the forest 4 to 5 miles away from the city. Through the gaps in the forest, they could clearly see that the city gate in the distance had already been closed. The miners outside the city had also finished their work long ago. They were either living in the mines or had already entered the city. Judging from the sparse patrols on the city wall, Black Iron City's defenses were not very tight. Sure Hu was even more confident when he saw this. At 7:50, a torch appeared on top of the city wall and swayed back and forth 3 times. When Sure Hu saw this, he was shocked. This was the secret signal that the spies in the city had agreed on with him. It indicated that everything was normal and that everything was going according to plan. Pass down the order. Prepare to move. Sure Hu quietly ordered. Yes, sir. In an instant, the mountain barbarians who had been leaning against the trees and resting quickly got up. They used the shortest amount of time to do a final check on their weapons and equipment. In less than 5 minutes, they were all lined up. The mountain barbarians, who were originally known for their loose discipline, had long since transformed into an iron-blooded army with strict military discipline under the tempering of Shanghai City's military system. The next few minutes were so tense that it was suffocating. At this time, even a small mistake could lead to the loss of the entire game. Sure Hu stared at the city gate. He did not even blink for a few minutes. At 7:56, with a creak, the drawbridge was slowly lowered. Charge! Sure Hu did not dare to delay and gave the order to charge. 5,000 mountain barbarians silently rushed out of the forest in the dark, as if they were walking on flat ground. They charged toward the city gate in battle formation. In the process, the city gate had already slowly opened. As a result, the mountain barbarians charged even more fiercely. Almost at the same time, Sure Hu activated his awakened general specialty, causing the speed of the troops to increase by another level. In less than 15 minutes, the army had already arrived at the city gate. Inside the open city gate it was pitch black. Charge in! Sure Hu was full of courage. Without thinking about anything else, he carried the heaven-splitting axe that the ruler had given him and was the first to charge into the city. The guards at the city gate were finally alarmed. They walked out in a daze and were met with an axe. Their heads fell to the ground. The massacre was carried out in the dark. After taking care of the guards at the city gate in 2 or 3 moves, Sure Hu did not dare to delay. He led his troops directly into the city lord's residence. Only by destroying the stone tablet of the city lord's residence's subsidiary territory could they be considered to have succeeded. Black Iron City was not a commercial city. At 8 o'clock at night it was already quite cold outside. There were no signs of human habitation on the street. The charge of the mountain barbarian soldiers completely broke the silence of the night. The Black Iron City guards who had received the news were still gathering in the camp when the mountain barbarian soldiers had already charged into the city lord's residence. Whether it was the bailiffs, the guards, or even the servants and guards, in front of the mountain barbarians, they were no different from ordinary people. They were all killed in one blow. With a swish, the axe fell. The Black Iron City guards died under Shur, whose heaven-splitting act. Mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience. Chapter 800. The unexpected fall of Black Iron City marked the beginning of a new phase in the Battle of Shu Province. Swordsman City's garrison in Jiangyang County, other than the 2nd Legion that had already gathered at Awang Pass, only the Imperial Guard Division and City Guard Division were left. Other than that, there were also the local garrisons. Thus, after the fall of Black Iron City, Swordsman City fell into a predicament where they had no soldiers to send. This made Feng Qingyue, who had just taken over the territory, feel extremely awkward. She realized that with the fall of Black Iron City, Shanghai City would no longer be satisfied with the price they had previously offered. The intelligent Feng Qingyue thought even further. An iron ore base like Black Iron City was only slightly important to Swordsman City, but to Shanghai City, which had grasped the technology of steelmaking and was vigorously promoting industrialization, it was a treasure. Since Shanghai City had taken over Black Iron City, they would not give it back. Just as Feng Qingyue had guessed, even without this matter, Ouyang Shuo would have found a reason to take over Black Iron City in the near future. To Shanghai City, the value of Black Iron City was even greater than a county. 23rd of January, Black Iron City. Because of the battle last night, the citizens of the city were so afraid that they could not sleep. When the cold morning light shone on the sky above the city again, this remote city that was previously inconspicuous had a new ruler. During the battle last night, Shur, who led 5,000 elites to occupy the city lord's mansion, and even defeated the Black Iron City Guard Division in one fell swoop, eliminating all resistance in the city. The entire city was now firmly under the control of Shanghai City. The battle last night was not limited to battles between armies. After the barbarian warriors took control of the situation, hundreds of elite spies from the 3 intelligence agencies in Black Iron City immediately took action. Under the cover of the night, they completed beautiful assassinations. All the important people in the city who obstructed Shanghai City from taking over Black Iron City were killed. Although not many people died in the assassinations of the intelligence agencies, it was the key to paralyzing Black Iron City. If one had to make a comparison, Shur, whose troops were slaughtering, while the intelligence agencies were performing a precise surgery. Those who should be killed were killed, and those who should not have died, none of them died. In one night, Black Iron City had changed. After Shur, who took over Black Iron City, his first order was to cut off the food supply to Aolong Pass. This alone was enough to make the garrison of Aolong Pass suffer. At noon on the 23rd, the news of Black Iron City's fall reached Aolong Pass. When the commander of Swordsman City's 2nd Army received the news, he was immediately dumbfounded. This commander was not a nameless figure. He was the great general of Shu during the 3 Kingdoms period, Wei Yan. After Liu Bei took control of Chengdu, most of the generals of Shu Han, with the exception of Guan Yu and Zhang Fei who died in battle, followed Liu Bei and served in the Chengdu Imperial Guards. In Swordsman City, Feng Qingyang of Feng, Feng of Dynasty, Feng of the King of Dynasty, Dynasty of Feng and of Feng. The general that Feng Qingyang had chosen was Wei Yan. Feng of Yang of Iron City, of Wei. When Liu Bei entered Sichuan, he was appointed as the general of the Yamen. After capturing Hanzhong, an exception was made and he was promoted as the general of Zhenyuan, commanding the governor of Hanzhong and guarding the city. During this period, Wei Yan requested Zhuge Liang to give him 10,000 troops to attack Guangzhou. After conquering Hanzhong, he was promoted to General Zhenyuan. During this period, Wei Yan repeatedly asked Zhuge Liang to give him 10,000 troops so that he could take another route to attack Guangzhou. Finally, he would join forces with Zhuge Liang at the Tong Pass. But Zhuge Liang always refused. This was also one of the reasons why Wei Yan was willing to take a step back. In Wei Yan's opinion, instead of being restrained by Zhuge Liang, it was better to take a step back. Once he arrived at Swordsman City, Wei Yan was appointed as the commander of the Second Army by Feng Qingyang. However, Wei Yan did not expect the first battle to be so difficult. With his retreat cut off, Wei Yan did not dare to make a decision. He immediately asked Feng Qingyang if they should continue to defend Aolong Pass, recapture Black Iron City, or even withdraw. However, Feng Xiaotian was temporarily in charge of Swordsman City. Wei Yan's memorial was naturally drowned in the vast sea of books, not stirring up a single ripple. Wei Yan had no choice but to fight to the end. This lasted for an entire day. While enduring the bombardment from the sky, they also had to face the fierce attacks of the barbarian mountain division. It was truly unbearable. If it weren't for Wei Yan's presence, the Dragon Cave Pass would have fallen. Even so, Swordsman City's Second Army suffered heavy casualties. At night, Wei Yan once again submitted a memorial to Feng Qingyang, pleading for his lord to make a decision. Otherwise, he could only act at his own discretion. To put it bluntly, Wei Yan wanted to retreat. Fortunately, Feng Qinyue took over the authority of Swordsman City the next day and read Wei Yan's memorial. This allowed Swordsman City's Second Army to escape the calamity. January 24th, Swordsman City. Feng Qinyue read the frontline battle report and did not dare to be negligent. On one hand, she issued an order to Wei Yan, ordering the Second Legion to temporarily guard the Aolong Pass. On the other hand, she urgently summoned the diplomatic mission of Shanghai City. City Lord Residence, Reception Hall. Does this mean that Swordsman City is willing to send back our Imperial Guards and compensate 800,000 gold coins for the looting of Dongchuan Prefecture? The leader of the diplomatic group, sent by the Chamberlain of Dependencies, said slowly, with no more anxiety on his face. Obviously, the news of the Imperial Guards taking over Black Iron City had reached the ears of the diplomatic group. Feng Qinyue suppressed her anger and nodded. That's right. We accept the two conditions raised by Shanghai Duke and are willing to carry them out immediately. We hope that your army will withdraw from Black Iron City and cease hostilities. This lowly official has already understood the wishes of your territory. This lowly official will immediately report to the Protectorate after I come down. As for the specific decision, we will still have to hear from my lord. The leader only promised to pass on the message, and did not respond to Feng Qinyue's request to withdraw. Only a fool would withdraw at this time. Feng Qinyue sighed inwardly. She knew that things weren't so simple. She helplessly said, "Then please give me an early reply. An extra day of delay is a sacrifice for the warriors of both sides." "Don't worry, Lord. This lowly official will take his leave first." With that said, he turned and left. Feng Qinyue frowned as she watched the diplomatic group leave. "I hope that your appetite isn't too big." At this moment, a black-clothed man entered the hall. Feng Qinyue asked the black-clothed man, "What's the reply from Chengdu?" Shu Han's Prime Minister Zhuge replied, "The Shu Han dynasty will not tolerate Shanghai City acting recklessly in Shu. As long as we apply, the Shu Han army will be able to reinforce Swordsman City at any time." According to the rules of the system, Royal City's army was not allowed to leave the city and fight with the Overlord's army in the wilderness. The only exception was when a territory in the wilderness applied for Royal City's protection and willingly became a vassal of Royal City. Only then, Royal City's army could send out troops in the name of protection. Even so, Royal City's army couldn't go beyond the territory that applied for protection. For a territory in the wilderness, once they applied for Royal City's protection, there would be no way out. Once they became a vassal, they would be a vassal for life. They would no longer have any autonomy. Thus, unless it was absolutely necessary, no territory would be willing to apply for protection from Royal City. Also, out of the 9 great king cities in China, not all of them could apply for protection. Only Xianyang, Luoyang, and Chengdu, which had emperors stationed in them, could accept the overlord's request for asylum. The scope of application was also limited to the province where Royal City was located. Feng Qingyue didn't feel relieved. He waved his hand tiredly and said, "I understand. You can go in the afternoon." Yes. How could Feng Qingyue not know about Shu Han's ambitions? Right now, they probably wanted Swordsman City to apply for protection so that they could use this opportunity to occupy Shu. Thus, Feng Qingyue wouldn't take this path unless it was absolutely necessary. On the same day, in Shanghai City. In the afternoon, the diplomatic mission's memorial was already on Ouyang Shua's desk. After meeting with Hua Tsubing in Lingxi City, Ouyang Shua didn't stay there and immediately returned to Shanghai City. The Spring Festival was approaching. As the Lord, he had to stay in Shanghai City even if there was an important matter. To the people in the territory, this was a powerful symbol that couldn't be underestimated. Thus, Ouyang Shua delayed the inspection of the 3 counties of Yunnan until after the new year. Before the war, Ouyang Shua didn't have any doubts about whether the Imperial Guards could take down Black Iron City. With Hua Tsubing's ability, if he couldn't even do such a small thing, how could he be worthy of the title of Divine General? As it turned out, Hua Tsubing did a good job. To be honest, Ouyang Shua didn't have much ambition for Swordsman City or the entire Shu. From the beginning, Ouyang Shua knew very well that in Shu, Shanghai City's biggest opponent was the Shu Han dynasty and not some swordsman city. Shanghai City didn't have the strength to challenge Royal City yet. Thus, he couldn't force Swordsman City too much. Even a cornered dog would jump over a wall. As for when to wrestle with the Shu Han dynasty, it would be better to wait until after the nation was established. The most important thing now was to calm the war in the southern border as soon as possible and incorporate the Yunnan province into Shanghai City's governance system. This was the final sprint and preparation for the establishment of the nation. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shua picked up his brush and commented on the memorial presented by the diplomatic mission. The original 2 conditions remain unchanged. Add one more. Black Iron City and its surrounding territories must all be ceded to Shanghai City. With the mountain pass as the boundary, both sides will stop fighting and not invade each other. Ouyang Shua had long intended to learn from the operation of the steel giants in reality. He wanted to integrate all the steel mills, coking coal factories and other factories in his territory to establish a large steel group to lay a solid foundation for the industrialization of his territory. Black Iron City, which was rich in iron ore and didn't lack coal, was undoubtedly the best choice. Ouyang Shua had even thought of a name for the group. It would be called Shushan Steel Group. Mobile users, please browse and enjoy a better reading experience. Chapter 801. Gaia Year 4, January 26, Shanghai City. It was New Year's Eve in 3 days, and Shanghai City was already decorated with lanterns and streamers. The victory of the Yunnan War added a sense of jubilation to the huge city. The faces of the people were brimming with pride and glory. With the Civil Affairs Bureau's immigration plan coming to an end, Shanghai City's population was approaching the 2 million mark. Especially with Shanghai City's overwhelming victory in the Yunnan War, countless players applied to live in Shanghai City. Players with a bit of foresight had already realized that the royal city was not permanently safe. When the Lord of the Wilderness reached a certain level of strength, there was bound to be conflict between the two. War was inevitable. Who had a better chance of winning? Different people had different opinions. However, one thing was clear. Compared to the royal city, the wilderness territory had limitless potential for development. Take Shanghai City as an example. In a short 3 years, it had grown from nothing to an army of 1 million. As for the royal city, it was limited by the system's rules and had been making no progress. When the wilderness and the royal city had a conflict, or even a life-and-death battle, the players caught between the two had to make a choice. If they were not careful, they could become sacrifices. They had to make a decision early. However, the opening of the underground world was imminent, and the players' attention was firmly locked. There was definite news that after the Lantern Festival, the 9 Great Royal City would simultaneously issue a plot mission related to the competition for the satellite cities. Before that, the Royal City was already surging with undercurrent. When the Yunnan War broke out, there were no less than 100 large-scale PK battles between the guilds, and countless small-scale conflict. The guild circle of the 9 Great Royal City was undergoing a cruel reshuffle. For the small and medium-sized guilds, they only had 3 choices. They could move to the wilderness collectively and give up on the extravagant hopes of the underground world. Of the 36 stratagems, fleeing was the best strategy to avoid this storm. They could choose a faction and be willing to be annexed by the giants and become part of the faction, or they could completely disappear. The guild would be broken up and its members would be absorbed. In the end, it would all be for naught. There was no other choice. If anyone wanted to play tricks and link up with the small and medium-sized guilds, imitating the model of the Lord City-State to form a guild alliance, they would immediately be suppressed by the large guilds without mercy. On this point, the large guilds had a consensus. The era of small fish in the guild circle was about to be gone forever. This reshuffle was thorough, the ripples spread far and wide, and the number of deaths was unprecedented. Even the newly released expansion pack, Martial Worlds Winds, wasn't enough to change the players' focus. The 9 Great Kings City had long since opened their martial arts dojos to the public, but there were very few people who entered the dojos to learn martial arts. With the Great War at hand, players pursued speedy method. They all hoped to improve their personal strength in the shortest time possible in preparation for the upcoming war. It was too late to learn the sect's foundational martial arts now. It would be of no help at all. If their martial arts clashed, their strength might even regress, and the gains would not make up for the losses. During this period of time, the prices of weapons and equipment, healing medicines such as gold sore medicine, and life-saving items such as substitute dolls were rising steadily. This was especially true for premium items. The price had doubled, and there was no market for them. In order to survive the war, players would not hesitate to spend gold coins. Meng Jida reported that the Four Seas Bank's deposits for January were lower than the withdrawal amount for the first time. The bank's deposits were experiencing an unprecedented negative growth. As a result, the Bank of the Four Seas had no choice but to reduce its loans to deal with the bank run. When Lingxi City was annexed, Lingxi City's shares and debts in the Bank of the Four Seas were all transferred to Shanghai City. For this, Ouyang Shua paid Baihua a lump sum of 500,000 gold coins as compensation. Gaia was undoubtedly a shrewd trader. The limited-time exchange event previously was not for the players to deposit the gold coins in the bank to generate interest, but for the players to spend them. The opening of the underworld and the competition for the satellite cities were Gaia's first big move. In other words, the upcoming guild war also allowed the Overlord players to make a lot of money from this feast. This was especially so for a military giant like Shanghai City. Just the orders from the allied guilds such as Snow Rose, Breeze Pavilion, and Tingle of the Rain had already exceeded 4 million gold coins. Fortunately, the war in Yunnan had just ended, and the weapons and equipment in the hands of the prisoners of war had to be changed to Shanghai City's standard equipment, freeing up over 200,000 sets of equipment. In addition to the scattered equipment collected from the battlefield, the amount was even greater. Just this alone allowed Shanghai City to earn more than 4 million gold coins. The territory's finances, which had been running dry at the end of the year, immediately turned for the better. Ouyang Shua's heroic spirit soared to the sky. He directly allocated 1,500,000 gold coins for the new round of army reorganization, as well as additional rewards for the officers and soldiers who participated in the Lingnan and Yunnan battles. The moment the news spread, the entire army was in an uproar. Of course, Ouyang Shua did not discriminate. He allocated another 500,000 gold coins to reward the civil officials of the territory. In particular, those who performed outstandingly would be rewarded handsomely. Without the hard work of tens of thousands of civil officials, how could the territory prosper? 2 million gold coins was considered the year-end bonus given by the big boss, Ouyang Shua. Such a large sum of money was something that the other territories could only look up to. Afternoon, Ouyang Shua's study. In the quiet study, Ouyang Shua was summoning the newly appointed Industry Director Chen Bingguang, Industry and Development Planning Director Cui Yingyu, and Finance Director Gong Jian. The Finance Department was a newly established department of the General Finance Department. It was in charge of the territory's budget and financial distribution. It was a very important department in the General Finance Department. Gong Jian was a financial officer of the Federation in the real world, and he had a lot of experience. After being recommended by Meng Jida and the financial expert Elder Xie, he was appointed as the finance director by Ouyang Shua after a strict investigation by the Black Snake Guard. Compared to the ancients, Gong Jian was obviously more skillful in managing the finance department. Ouyang Shua summoned the three of them to discuss the establishment of the Shushan Steel Group. The planned Shushan Steel Group would be directly managed by the Industry Department. The Finance Department would provide financial support and supervision, and the Industry and Development Planning Department would give appropriate industrial policies. Just yesterday, Shanghai City and Swordsman City had reached a memorandum of understanding, and the war in the southwest had subsided. Feng Qingyue agreed to Ouyang Shua's condition of ceding Black Iron City, but on top of that, he added another request. Swordsman City and Shanghai City would sign a trade agreement and trade with each other. In the details, Feng Qingyue clearly stated that he hoped that Shanghai City's steel group in Black Iron City could sell high-quality steel to Swordsman City. Ouyang Shua was greatly surprised when he heard the news. Compared to his brother, Feng Qingyang, Feng Qingyue's methods were much more brilliant. Ouyang Shua had no reason to refuse, but he set a limit on steel exports. The Shushan Steel Group would only export to Swordsman City if it could meet the demand of the territory itself. Feng Qingyue was worried that Ouyang Shua was playing with words, so he added a minimum export quota. Both sides had a lot of arguments over this matter. After 4 rounds of discussion, the two finally reached an agreement on the Memorandum of Understanding. The specific terms and details were still being discussed by the officials of both sides, so Ouyang Shua did not need to intervene. On the same day, Feng Qingyue ordered the Second Army to withdraw from Aolong Pass and Black Iron City. The Imperial Guards naturally took over the defense of Black Iron City. When the Long-Liveshire Army arrived at Black Iron City and completed the handover, the Imperial Guards would return to Shanghai City. Black Iron City was located at the southernmost part of Jiangyang County, and there was only one pass connecting it to the north. As long as the Long-Liveshire Army could guard this pass, the defense of the north could rest easy. To the west was the Chong County where the Chong tribe lived. There was a huge difference in altitude between the two places, and it was difficult for birds to fly. Only the locals could find a small path in the mountains, and it was impossible for the army to travel. The south was connected to Dongchuan County, and the Luo Shixin army would be stationed there, ready to reinforce at any time. To the east of Black Iron City was the North Sichuan province, which was also a high mountain and long road. There was also a pass guarding it, and the army needed to be stationed there. If necessary, the pass would be reinforced. All in all, there was not much pressure on the defense of Black Iron City. With the Long-Liveshire Army, there was nothing to worry about for the time being. Even if Swordsman City joined forces with the Shu Han dynasty to attack, they would not be able to break in for a while. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo was relieved to build the Shushan Steel Group in Black Iron City. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo simply ordered to change the name of Black Iron City to Steel City. The Shushan Steel Group would be a pillar of the territory's industrialization, so it could not be neglected. The initial capital of the Steel Group will be 500,000 gold coins. With this unexpected fortune, Ouyang Shuo was even more confident, so he rushed to settle this matter before the Spring Festival. If it was before, Gong Jian would probably be the first to stand up and object. This time, the financial secretary gave the green light, and Gong Jian even said with a smile, 500,000 gold coins is only the initial budget. If we want to increase the investment in the future, the financial secretary will definitely support us, and we can still take out 300,000 to 500,000. The words of the god of fortune were indeed rich and overbearing. Ouyang Shuo glanced at Chen Bingguang and said in a half-joking, half-serious tone, "Old Chen, the Ministry of Finance has given us enough funds to build the factory, but your industry department can't be extravagant. Good steel must be used on the blade, and money must also be calculated carefully." Every penny of the territory did not come from a flood, and Ouyang Shuo, as the parent, had to keep a close eye on it. Chen Bingguang said with a gentle expression, "Lord, please rest assured." After that, the industry department will set up an audit team to be responsible for monitoring the Shushan Steel Group, and we will not spend a single copper coin. Ouyang Shuo nodded and said, "The industry department also needs to keep an eye on the No. 7 Research Institute. The current steelmaking technology in the territory is not mature, and if we really want to make steel on a large scale, we need to achieve a breakthrough in technology." Understood. After the discussion, Ouyang Shuo took the opportunity to end the meeting. If they really wanted to build the framework of the Shushan Steel Group, after that, the industry department, including the other departments of the protectorate, had to do a lot of solid and meticulous work. These things could not be completed in a day or two. Just the preliminary survey, evaluation, research, and overall design, including the group's framework and related personnel arrangements, could not be completed in a month or two. It was better to be slow in the early stage than to clean up the mess later. The industry department had set up a preparatory team to be responsible for the construction of the Shushan Steel Group. Chapter 802. After dealing with the matter of the Shushan Iron and Steel Group, Ouyang Shuo was officially sealed and began his vacation. Over the past year, the various systems of the territory had been perfected, and the holiday system was one of them. Ouyang Shuo couldn't ask his officials to work 365 days a year. That was too inhumane. The territory followed the system of the Tang dynasty and formulated a detailed vacation system. Winter solstice and Yuanjing were given 7 days of leave each. Apart from that, the Mid-Autumn Festival, the Laba Festival, the Summer Solstice, the Dragon Boat Festival, the Chongyang Festival, and other traditional festivals were all closed for 3 days. Yuanjing, the 7-day holiday of the Spring Festival, was implemented according to the Yuanjing, 3 days before and after the Yuanjing. With the first day of the Lunar New Year as the center, there would be a 3-day holiday before the first day of the Lunar New Year and a 3-day holiday after the first day of the Lunar New Year. Tomorrow, January 27th, was the first day of the Spring Festival holiday. During the holidays, all levels of government offices were sealed and stopped their official business. Officials went home to celebrate the New Year and visit their relative. They would only return to the Yamen on the 5th day of the first lunar month. As a result, Ouyang Shuo postponed the scheduled meeting of commanders until after the holiday. For the next few days, Ouyang Shuo enjoyed a rare moment of leisure. If he wasn't dressed casually, he would accompany Binger to various places in the city to enjoy the bustling scenery of Shanghai City and experience the various customs of the people. If not, he would spend his time with Song Jiao under the moonlight, lovey-dovey. From time to time, he would go to Southwest University China Hall to drink wine and play chess with Tai Gong, or pay a visit to Confucius and listen to the teachings of the sages. Sometimes, he would go to the tea house to listen to songs, watch dances, and drink tea. In the blink of an eye, 2 to 3 hours would pass. In his spare time, he would also go to the back garden to watch the flowers perform their swordplay, teasing the lucky beast Kiaichi, who had already settled down in the garden. Sometimes, he would simply sit alone in the pavilion in a daze, thinking of nothing and doing nothing. No one was allowed to see him. On New Year's Eve, Ouyang Shua held a banquet in the main hall to celebrate with the people. As for Gaia's New Year's Eve activities, Ouyang Shua was no longer interested. On the other hand, Binger received another huge gift from Gaia. Her face was beaming with joy. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, there would be an unshakable sacrificial ceremony. The only change was that Song Jia, as the wife of the Protectorate of the Southern Border, had appeared with Ouyang Shu. There was also a small interlude during this time. While worshipping the Yellow Emperor, the sound of a system notification entered Ouyang Shua's ears. System notification. Congratulations to player not have clothes. Your territory's auspicious beast, Chi-1, has been affected by the sacrificial event and has triggered an auspicious sign, a sweeping golden dragon. Congratulations, player. Just as he finished speaking, a dragon's roar suddenly came from the sky above the heavenly altar. Looking up, he saw a golden dragon appear out of thin air, swimming around in the sky. The golden scales were dazzling and eye-catching. This immediately shocked everyone present. Those who were qualified to participate in the sacrificial ceremony were all important ministers of the territory. How could they not be excited when they saw such a phenomenon? Shao He then spoke up, "My lord, the appearance of the golden dragon is a sign of an emperor. It is suitable for us to establish a nation." Ouyang Shua nodded and didn't reply directly. It wasn't good to boast at this time, right? Without a doubt, this auspicious aura provided a basis for the establishment of Shanghai City. It immediately unified the territory and increased the loyalty of the officials in the territory as well as the popularity of the people. Since there was such an auspicious sign, it was naturally what the people wanted. On the second day of the new year, all sorts of lantern festivals and temple fairs were held in Shanghai City. The auspicious sign from the previous day had already been put on stage by storytellers, entertainers, and all sorts of other people to promote the appearance of an emperor, further clearing the obstacles to the establishment of the territory and to guide public opinion. Even the major media outlets had detailed reports on this matter. When Di Chun and the others saw this, they were shocked. They realized that Ouyang Shua was creating momentum. His goal was to create an unstoppable momentum in the entire wilderness and establish the prestige of the country. Even so, they were powerless to stop it. It was truly bitter. Affected by this, more and more people with special abilities were willing to settle down in Shanghai City. This was the general trend. No one could stop it. From the second day of the new year, Ouyang Shua followed the crowd and appeared at the various temple fairs with Binger and Song Jia, causing waves of commotion. Every time he went out, the divine martial guards would clear the way. The entire journey was strictly guarded, and there was an indescribable majesty. During this period, Little Ant brought Xiesiun over once. It could be considered a reunion dinner. Amidst the clamor, Gaia's fourth year of the new year quietly came to an end. It was a new year. Gaia's fourth year, 3rd of February, 5th of the first month. On the first day of the holiday, Ouyang Shua held the first court meeting of the new year. During the court meeting, Shao He, Wei Yang, Fan Li, and Du Ruhui jointly submitted a memorial. They proposed to officially put the establishment of the country on the agenda and make it the top priority of the new year. Ouyang Shua did not decline this time and agreed on the spot. It was definitely not a simple matter for Shanghai City to establish a country. Other than the rigid condition of Shanghai City being promoted to a capital city, There were other major matters that needed to be carried out. The first was to establish the country's name. The matter of a country's name was no trivial matter. It concerned the destiny of the entire territory and the foundation of the country. Everything had a process. If one started from scratch and had to go through hardships, it would be difficult to obtain destiny if the foundation was not stable. Just like the current Shanghai city, the name Shanghai was just a miscellaneous name that was not recorded in history. Therefore, no matter how heaven-defying the characteristics of Shanghai city's territory were, it was difficult to attract true geniuses who would willingly serve it. This meant that the foundation was not stable. In history, the Qin dynasty had the water virtue. The water virtue was black, which referred to the aura of ghosts and gods. It was not suitable for the mortal world. Humans had black aura and were close to the netherworld. The country's lifespan was not long. The Qin dynasty overturned the previous system of kings, abolished the feudal system, and proclaimed themselves as emperors. They were the pioneers of history. Since they were pioneers, they did not have any foundation. As a result, they died in 3 generations. The Han dynasty succeeded the Qin system. With the Qin dynasty paving the way, it slowly turned into the fire virtue. After that, the successive dynasties, with the Qin dynasty's accumulation, had successfully established the way of the emperor. It had set a foundation in the world, and the successors would inherit it. Therefore, there was no need to start from scratch. Not only the dynasties, even the titles of princes and princes were very particular. Generally speaking, other than the crown prince, the other sons of the first wife or the sons of concubines that the emperor doted on would be conferred the title of king. For example, the king of Qin, the king of Jin, the king of Qi, the king of Chu, the king of Zhao, the king of Wei, the king of Zheng, etc. Among them, the titles of Qin, Jin, Qi, and Chu were the most respected because they represented the most powerful states during the spring and autumn and warring states period. The sons of the emperor's brothers and the imperial concubines of higher status would also be conferred the title of prince. For example, the Prince of Yu, the Prince of Wu, the Prince of Shu, the Prince of Dai, the Prince of Wei, the Prince of Qi, the Prince of Han, the Prince of Lu, the Prince of Liang, etc. The other concubines' titles were not as good. For example, Huo Wang, Mi Wang, Ting Wang, Jing Wang, Liang Wang, Yi Wang, Su Wang, and so on. Below the imperial prince, there was still the imperial prince, which was even more inferior. The title of Jun Wang was usually 2 characters and was conferred after the name of the county. For example, the Jun Wang of Changshan, the Jun Wang of Lingling, the Jun Wang of Langia, the Jun Wang of Zhongshan, the Jun Wang of Beiping, the Jun Wang of Hejian, the Jun Wang of Jiangxia, and so on. They could also be referred to as the king of Changshan, the king of Lingling, the king of Langia, the king of Zhongshan, the king of Beiping, the king of Hejian, the king of Jiangxia, etc. Therefore, when it came to king titles, it wasn't just king titles. It represented luck and foundation. As such, when overlord players established a country, it was best to inherit an ancient title. They would inherit the foundation of the dynasty and would not need to start from scratch. The foundation of the territory would be stable. Past rebellions did not understand this. They would often call themselves kings in other places, create inferior king titles, or even king titles that had never appeared before. This kind of new king title was possible, but it was like a branch stuck in the ground. For it to grow, it had to first take root. However, taking root required time and luck. When heroes fought for hegemony, every bit of luck was used on the struggle for hegemony. There was no time left to build a foundation. As such, all of the rebellions had failed. Instead, they helped the successors. For example, the Chunxing and Wu Guang revolts had created the Great Han Dynasty. The Yellow Turban revolts had created the Weijin Dynasty. The Sui Dynasty's rapid rise and fall had created the Great Tang Empire. All of these things were like this. In the wilderness, starting from the Qin Dynasty, all the important dynasties would appear in the wilderness one by one. If overlord players did not know what was good for them and used Qin, Han, Tang, Song, Yuan, Ming, etc., when establishing a country, there would be a lot of trouble. In order to maintain legitimacy, the imperial city that inherited the country's name had the right to declare war on that territory. The final result would be a fight to the death. Only one of the two could survive and continue the country's name. If there was a lord that was confident in destroying the corresponding imperial city, it was not impossible. Ouyang Shua did not have this ambition for now. Therefore, there were only two choices in front of Shanghai City. The first was to choose a country from the spring and autumn warring state. Qi, Chu, Zhao, and Zheng were all good choices. During the Three Kingdoms period, the Wei, Wu, and Shu Han all used this method. This included the 16 kingdoms of the Southern Dynasty, as well as the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms. Among the countries, it was best not to touch the Qin, Wei, and Jin dynasties that had historical dynasties. Otherwise, there might be a day when there would be a dispute over the country's name. Even if the country did not take over the imperial city in the future, there was a chance that they could establish a foundation in the wilderness, just like Xiong Yu's West Chu. Before West Chu was destroyed, it was best for the overlord not to choose the country's name, Chu. The second was to go back a bit and choose one of the 3 ancient names Xiakama, Shang, and Zhou. These 3 dynasties did not appear in the wilderness, and they were the start of all dynasties, so they were not bad choices. Wu Zetian changed Tang to Zhou and established the Wu-Zhou dynasty. In the wilderness, these country names were first come, first serve. Once it was used by an overlord player, later generations would not be able to use it. If they wanted to use it, the only way was to destroy the country and empty the name of the country again. It would be extremely difficult for later generations to achieve this. Ouyang Shua was more inclined to the second option. There were only 3 ancient country names and they were the 3 most important ones. However, in the royal court, Ouyang Shua did not express his opinion. He only let the ministers discuss it before making a decision. Chapter 803. The establishment of a nation required not only the establishment of a title, but also the establishment of a system. The structure of the Southern Border Protectorate began from the village era. It went through 3 levels: town, county, and prefecture. Step by step, it was expanded and adjusted according to the needs of the territory's development. Now, the entire structure was becoming more and more perfect. After the establishment of a nation, it was not advisable to change the structure of the dynasty or it would destabilize the nation. Therefore, the system had to be sorted out one last time before the establishment of a nation. The cabinet that Ouyang Shua had previously envisioned had to be settled before that. Especially the cabinet, as the core governing body of the dynasty, it had to be presided over by a mighty figure. According to the system, the cabinet did not wield any real power. This also meant that Xiao He, Wei Yang, and Fan Li, who held real power, had no right to enter the cabinet. If they wanted to enter the cabinet, they had to resign from their current positions. The selection of the cabinet elders was the most important matter for Ouyang Shua. Ouyang Shua had wanted to invite Jiang Shang into the cabinet. A few days ago, when he was playing chess with great-grandfather, he had unintentionally mentioned it. Great-grandfather did not directly reject it. If he really wanted to invite him, Ouyang Shua would have to put in more effort. Other than the establishment of a title and a system, the protectorate had to be renovated and upgraded into a palace. Correspondingly, palace maids and eunuchs had to be selected to maintain the daily operations of the palace. The fortifications of the entire palace also had to undergo a complete upgrade. With the release of the expansion pack Martial Worlds Winds and Turns, the martial world that was hidden in the wilderness would gradually surface. The emergence of martial experts would naturally raise the security of the palace to a higher standard. To martial artists, the palace would be an absolute forbidden ground. They would not be allowed to roam freely in the palace. As for the preparations for the coronation ceremony, there was no need for Ouyang Shuo to worry about it. There were people handling it. There were even ministers in the imperial court that suggested for the emperor to take in concubines to enrich the harem. When Ouyang Shuo heard this, he flatly rejected it, leaving no room for negotiation. He was very clear that this was not transmigration after all. It was just a training experience for overlord players in the game. The protagonists of the game were still players living in modern society. They were a group of modern people. No matter how much Ouyang Shuo abided by the ancient system, he could not use it as an excuse to have multiple wives. That was a form of disrespect to love, songjia, and even women. Some of the bad habits of the ancient dynasties had to be resolutely abandoned. There was no room for discussion. From now on, no matter when or where, you are not allowed to bring up this kind of suggestion. Otherwise, I can only conclude that this person harbors evil intentions. Ouyang Shuo said. When the officials heard this, their hearts turned solemn. From then on, the concubine would become a taboo topic, and no one would dare to mention it again. After a small interlude, the imperial court meeting officially came to an end. After that, the territory would enter the establishment period, and all sorts of affairs would revolve around the establishment. February 4th, the Southern Border Protectorate, Martial Heroic Hall. Early in the morning, Ouyang Shuo summoned all the divine generals and held a military conference that had been decided before the new year. The participants included Director of Military Affairs Du Ruhui, Commander-in-Chief of the Nanyang Navy Zheng He, Commander of the Imperial Guard Hua Tsubing, Commander of the Dragon Stallion Army Bai Qi, Commander of the Stallion Tiger Army Sun Bin, and Commander of the Hidden Leopard Army Han Exin. Because the participants were mainly the commanders of the army, it was called the Commanders' Conference. The commanders' meeting started at 8 in the morning and continued all the way to 6:30 in the evening before coming to an end. During this period, he only paused for half an hour during lunchtime. At the end of the meeting, all the divine generals were in high spirits. The next day, according to the minutes of the meeting, the General Administration of Military Affairs compiled a detailed military reorganization plan overnight and submitted it to Ouyang Shuo. After Ouyang Shuo's review and approval, the largest reorganization of the entire army would be launched. The first to be adjusted was the Nanyang Navy. The Jiaozhou fleet commanded by Shi Lang was officially renamed the Izhou Fleet and moved from the Jiaozhou port of Zhenhai City to the Xinglong port in the south of Izhou County. In reality, the Xinglong port was also a large global port, large enough to accommodate the Izhou fleet. As the largest island in China, Izhou Island was more than 70% mountainous and hilly, and the plains were mainly concentrated in the narrow and long areas along the western coast. It was such a unique geographical environment that allowed the army of Shanghai City to successfully capture Izhou Island. During the war, both fleets cruised along the coast and cooperated with the ground forces to attack the cities. However, those who resisted stubbornly would be attacked by the warship's cannons. Like the Li tribe of Jingzhou Island, the Gaoshan tribe of Izhou Island was also spread throughout the island. After Overlord City captured Izhou Island, they built 3 cities on the western coast of the island, in the north, south, and middle sections. The names of the cities were simple: Yinbei City, Yinzhongking, and Yinan City. Then, with the 3 cities as the core, 3 prefectures were established to manage the entire territory of Izhou Island. The Xinglong port was located in Yinan City, which was also the administrative center of Izhou County that Ouyang Shuo had delineated. The Izhou fleet would use Izhou County as a base to cover the Dongsha Islands and take over the Izhou Strait. To the north, they could advance into the East Sea. To the south, they could deter the Luzon Kingdom. To the east, they could enter the Luzon Sea and then advance into the Pacific Ocean. The fleet that was also renamed was the North Bay Fleet commanded by Zhou Yu. The Battle of Black Iron City fully exposed a fatal weakness of the territory's navy, which was that they overemphasized naval operations and neglected to cooperate with the land forces in inland water systems. The territory's three major provinces all had developed water systems that were enough to support the fleet's shuttle back and forth. For this reason, the commanders' meeting decided to rename the North Bay Fleet as the Southern Frontier Fleet. The station would be moved from the North Sea port of Beihai City to the Jiaozhou port of Zhenhai City. The maritime defense area of the North Bay would be completely handed over to the Cliff Mountain Fleet. More importantly, the Southern Frontier Fleet would be committed to inland operations, with the five major formations as the core, extending their tentacles into the three major provinces to ensure that they could cooperate with the land forces at any time. Zhenhai City was just a mobile station for the Southern Frontier Fleet. In the future, when the time was right, the entire fleet would be divided into parts and gradually penetrate into the depths of the inland, completely bidding farewell to naval operations. In this way, Zhou Yu's commanding ability could be better utilized. The headquarters of the Southern Frontier Fleet that Ouyang Shua had envisioned was located in Panyang Lake in Jiangchuan Province. Panyang Lake was the largest freshwater lake in China. After the game map was expanded 10 times, it became even more vast and boundless, enough to support a southern frontier fleet. However, Jiangchuan Province did not belong to Shanghai City for the time being, so this matter could only be considered at length. With the renaming of the two major fleets, the Nanyang Navy's activities were no longer limited to Nanyang. In view of this, the name Nanyang Navy was somewhat inappropriate and could not keep up with the development of the situation. After Ouyang Shua discussed with Zheng He, they decided to simply cancel the designation of Nanyang Navy and rename the Nanyang Navy Headquarters that had already been established as Navy Headquarters. The five major naval fleets were unified under the command of the Navy Headquarters. In addition to changing the names of the fleets, adjusting the fleet defense area, and establishing the Navy Headquarters. This time, the commanders' meeting also reshaped the personnel structure of the entire Navy. The purpose was to warm up in advance for the future industrialization of the Navy. The first was to establish the Marine Corps. With the Frogman Brigade as the foundation, a powerful Marine Corps would be established to cooperate with the fleet for landing operations. In the Battle of Ijo Island that had just ended, it was precisely because the Cliff Mountain Fleet and the Jiaozhou Fleet lacked the strength to engage in landing operations that they had no choice but to seek the cooperation of the brave Tiger Army's Third Corps to be able to take down Ijo Island. In the future, the Navy would engage in expeditionary operations, and most of the time, they would not be able to get the cooperation of the Army. Therefore, within the Navy system, it was very necessary to establish a Marine Corps for amphibious operations. For the territory, the Marine Corps was a new thing that was still in the exploration stage. Therefore, Ouyang Shua did not want to bite off more than he could chew. The establishment of the Marine Corps was temporarily set as a division. The members of the Marine Corps would be jointly selected from the soldiers of the five major fleets, as well as the prisoners of war from the Battle of Yunnan. In order to train the Marine Corps into shape, Ouyang Shua specifically instructed Viper, who was in charge of the Special Operations Training Base, to build a specialized Marine Corps training base in Beihai Port. The purpose was naturally to train the ability of the members in amphibious operations. After the Marine Corps, which was directly under the Navy command, was trained and tested in actual combat, the five major fleets would use it as a foundation to establish their own Marine Corps. The whole process was estimated to take 6 months to a year. The second was to adjust the composition of the five major fleets. Among the soldiers of the five major fleets, other than the cannoneers and a small number of musketeers, in order to cooperate with long-range operations, the archers were mainly used, accounting for more than 70%. In ancient times, there was nothing wrong with using cold weapons to fight on water. However, the future naval battles would be a showdown between cannons and guns. No matter how powerful the archers were, they would only be live targets. Therefore, the commanders' meeting decided that in the 4th year of Gaia, the 5 major fleets would gradually reduce the number of archers. Within a year, the proportion of archers would be reduced to less than 40%. A portion of the vacated soldiers would be used to establish a marine corps directly under the fleet, to enhance the strength of the fleet for landing operations. The remaining soldiers would be mainly inclined to the cannoneers and musketeers. In particular, musketeers would be the main force of the navy in the future. There were similarities between archers and musketeers, so it was not difficult to switch professions. Of course, reducing the proportion of archers did not mean giving up on sharp weapons like crossbows, especially the king of long-range cold weapons like the divine armed crossbow. Not only could it not be given up, it had to be strengthened. In the future, the divine armed crossbow would become the standard for the soldiers. Similarly, the standard was the new generation of standard Tang saber that the Equipment Research Center was developing, codenamed T1. This Tang saber was specially developed for the soldiers. It combined the advantages of the Tang saber and the Western saber. It was light and sharp. It was most suitable for the soldiers in close combat, and it was their last line of defense. The third was to adjust the bases of the 5 major fleets. Other than their main bases, the 5 major fleets would also establish 3 to 4 bases in the main coastal cities of their respective defensive zones in Gaia 4 years, so as to strengthen their control over the sea. A fleet of more than 100,000 soldiers gathered at a military port would not only be a burden on the port, it would also be detrimental to emergency operations. The mobilization of the troops would be a step slower. Chapter 804. In addition to adjusting the Navy, the most important thing in this meeting was the reorganization of the army. The first adjustment was the Imperial Guards. In the Battle of Yongren City, the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was crippled and then resurrected. After Swordsman City returned 15,000 prisoners of war, the Imperial Guards suffered very little damage. Huotsubing, the commander of the Imperial Guards, had a very distinct fighting style. He was good at cavalry warfare and liked to fight in motion, long-distance raids, surprise attacks, and surprise attacks. However, Huotsubing was not used to storming. The existence of the mountain barbarian heavy infantry was a hindrance to Huotsubing. One of the reasons for the defeat of Yongren City was that the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was badly mixed up and could not form an effective combination of mobility. The mountain barbarian heavy infantry, armored beast cavalry, and light cavalry were disjointed. This not only restricted Huotsubing, the divine general, but it was also a waste of the mountain barbarian heavy infantry, the trump card of the territory. After discussion in the meeting, it was decided to reorganize the Imperial Guards. The biggest change was the 1st Imperial Guard Legion. The first was to take out the Armored Beast Division of the 1st Imperial Guard Legion and reorganize it into a cavalry division directly under the Imperial Guard. The Armored Beast Division was the trump card of the heavy cavalry. It was only suitable for entering the battlefield at critical moments. It was also a special unit of Shanghai City. After being directly under the army, it would be convenient for Huotsubing to command. The second was to take out the 2 cavalry divisions of the 1st Imperial Guard Legion and reorganize 3 cavalry divisions from the prisoners of war to form the 3rd Imperial Guard Legion. In this way, the Imperial Guards would have 2 pure cavalry legions. Ouyang Shua's choice for the commander of the 3rd Imperial Guard Legion was the fierce General Lu Bu. Lu Bu's bravery combined with Huotsubing's intelligence would ferment a different kind of battle effect. Lu Bu and Ma Chao, the strongest generals of the 3 kingdoms, would compete on the same stage again. The third was to reorganize the mountain barbarians gathered during the Yunnan War into the 1st Imperial Guard Legion. The 50,000 mountain barbarians had gone through the baptism of the Yunnan War, and there were only 46,000 left. They could no longer be considered rookies. This reorganization would select the best of the best and compress them into 3 mountain barbarian heavy infantry divisions. This way, the 1st Imperial Guard Legion would be a pure mountain barbarian army. With the establishment of the nation at hand, Shanghai City could not be without a strong military presence. Therefore, the 1st Legion of the Imperial Guards would be stationed in King City, becoming the only permanent army in Shanghai City. Ouyang Shi even gave it the name Monolith Army, to show his respect of the army. In order to facilitate management, Shi, who was appointed as the 1st Legion's deputy legion commander, in charge of the 1st Legion's daily military affairs. Hua Zubing's main focus was still on external expeditions. He mainly commanded the 2 cavalry legions. To say, once the above 3 points were done, the Imperial Guards would be able to go into battle even more lightly equipped than before. To be, they would be, they and they too. Taking care of both inside and outside, with a balance of offense and defense, he lived up to his reputation as the trump card of the territory. To generals. They was to army. Army Imperial. This would also further liberate the army commanders, allowing them to focus more on the army's military affairs. The 3 deputy army commanders had all been promoted from division commanders within the army, so they could be considered internal promotions. The deputy commander of the 1st Dragon Stallion Legion was Zhao Bonu, the most important general under Hua Zubing's command. The deputy commander of the 1st Tiger Legion was Chao Yu. The Leopard Legion had chosen Wei Zhang. None of the 3 deputy commanders had the potential to be promoted to commander, but they were all experts. Placing them in the 1st Imperial Guard Legion was an optimal allocation of resources. Although the Imperial Guard Legion had been added, there were only 40,000 captive. Thus, the remaining captives could be reorganized into 2 more field legions. Of the 2 quotas, one was given to the city guards to form the 2nd Imperial Guard Legion. Ouyang Shi chose the female general, Mu Guiying, as the commander. Mu Guiying was not only a veteran general of the territory, but she was also from Mulan City. She was very familiar with the Lian Province basin, and as a female general, she was a good match for Eli. As such, with 2 city guard legions on the outside and the Monolith Army on the inside, even if Shanghai City was promoted to a capital city and its population increased exponentially, it would still be able to sit back and relax. There was no need to worry about small fries causing trouble. For the time being, the city guards did not have a commander. Eli and Mu Guiying were the 2 commanders, neither managing the other. The remaining quota was given to the Leopard Legion to form the 4th Imperial Guard Legion. Chen Yuqing, the commander of the 1st Division of the Leopard Legion's 2nd Imperial Guard Legion, was the young general of the Taiping Army. Chen Yuqing's ascension signified that the Taiping Army was quietly rising in the army. Among the generals of Shanghai City, the Taiping Army generals were the most special. This was because they had all seen cannons, muskets, and other firearms. They were not the traditional generals of history. Putting the Taiping Army generals in important positions was also a warm-up for future military reforms. In addition to Chen Yuqing, there were also Li Xiuqing and Xiao Chaogui. When the time was right, Ouyang Shi would also promote them to the position of commander. In addition, Shi Dakai, who had left Tianjing City after the coup in Tianjing, had recently changed his mind and settled down in Shanghai City. He was currently studying in the Army's martial arts lecture hall. As the strongest general of the Taiping Army, Shi Dakai's arrival excited Ouyang Shi. He had a secret talk with Shi Dakai, completely untangling the knot in his heart and gaining Shi Dakai's loyalty. After his study, Shi Dakai would take up a post in the army. Name, Shi Dakai. Title, Shi Gondang Dynasty, Qing Dynasty. Identity, General of Shanghai City. Occupation, Special General. Loyalty, 75 points. Commander, 85. Martial Strength, 85. Intelligence, 70. Politics, 70. Specialty, Literary and Military Strategy, raises troop morale by 40, troop cohesion by 30, troop attack power by 20. Technique, foot jabbing punch. Equipment, omitted. Evaluation, outstanding in literary and military strategy, brave and fearless, upright, gentle, and clean. Shi Dakai could be said to be the most legendary general of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. He was invited to leave the mountains at the age of 16, commanded thousands of troops at the age of 19, and was made a king at the age of 20. He died a heroic death at the age of 32. In history, Shi Dakai had once forced the commander of the Xiong army, Xing Guofan, to commit suicide by drowning himself in the river. If it weren't for the internal strife in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom that forced Shi Dakai to return to Tianjin, Xing Guofan would have met his end. Xing Guofan was the head of the 4 famous ministers of the late Qing dynasty, the founder of the Xiong army, and one of the initiators of the Westernization movement. He was appointed the governor of Liangjiang, the governor of Zhili, and the grand secretary of the Martial Hall. He was conferred the title of Marquis Resolute and Brave, with the posthumous title of Wenjing. To be able to force such an extraordinary person into a corner was a testament to Shi Dakai's outstanding talent. Not only could Shi Dakai lead troops to war, but his martial arts skills were also extraordinary, and he practiced both internal and external martial arts. The Peking Martial Arts Academy lecture notes even listed him, along with Su Xianping, Patriarch Bodhidharma, Emperor Taizu of Song, Yu Wumu, Zhang Sanfeng, Qi Jiguang, and Gan Fengqi as the most outstanding boxing masters in China's history. The jabbing kick fist, also known as the hero of the northern kick, was created by Shi Dakai. Shi Dakai taught this martial art to the selected soldiers, so that they would be invincible in battle. What was even more difficult was that Shi Dakai was not only well-versed in military affairs, but also in political affairs. In the autumn of 1853, after Shi Dakai arrived in Anhui, he organized for the people to register their residences, elected officials at the grassroots level, and held imperial examinations to attract talent. He established a 3-tier administrative system at the provincial, prefectural, and county levels, giving the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom the scale of a country. At the same time, Shi Dakai also enforced military discipline, restored public order, provided relief to the poor, and consoled the suffering. He made sure that farmers, merchants were able to work in peace. He also formulated tax laws and collected taxes to provide the resources needed for the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's political and military activities. If such a talent had not been born in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, he would surely have been a peerless figure. It was no wonder that Gaia had directly rated Shi Dakai as an imperial-level historical general. Shi Dakai had no shortcomings in any of his 4 attributes. Even among imperial-level generals, he was an outstanding existence. How could Ouyang Shua not be excited to have such a great general serve him? Other than reorganizing the army, the Conference of Commanders also made important arrangements for the defense of the 3 war zones. After taking over the Yunnan province, Shanghai City had the capital to establish a country with 3 provinces. It was enough to stand tall in the wilderness of the China region, unshakable by others. For at least half a year, or even longer, Shanghai City would not attack internally. The overall strategy of the territory would shift from internal to external. It would begin to attack the ASEAN countries and the predetermined Morocco. As the saying goes, to resist foreign aggression, one must first stabilize the interior. If Ouyang Shua wanted to instigate a war and go overseas, he had to first ensure the safety of his home. After the 3 provinces were connected, The south was either the coastline or the national border, so there was no need to worry for the time being. The west was also the national border, so there was no need to worry. The east was the Minnan province, so there was no need to worry. However, with the change in the dragon-seeking acupuncture point, he had to take some precautions. The main thing was to prevent the dragon-seeking acupuncture point from being instigated by the Yanhuang alliance. It was because of this that Ouyang Shua arranged for the brave Tiger Army to be stationed in Chaozhou County. The biggest threat to the territory still came from the north. Although the three major powers, Chuanbei City, Xiangnan City, and Swordsman City, had temporarily made peace with Shanghai City and even signed a trade agreement to trade with each other. However, everyone knew that there were too many uncertainties in this. Because of this, more than 70% of the three war zones' forces were deployed at the northern border. The Conference of Commanders this time was to coordinate the three war zones' northern defense zone, so that they could cooperate and not fight separately. The second was to build a large number of war fortresses at the border, from point to line, forming a complete northern defense line, instead of concentrating the army in one place. If not, Ouyang Shua would not be able to set his mind at ease. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.